Hello, friends and neighbors. It is The Drive with Brian Wilson. No Brian Wilson today or this week. Brian out for the full week. Matt Murphy in for Brian. Normally, you hear me from noon until 3, Monday through Friday on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I have been pleased to be able to join you from 3 until 7 on these days. We've got Wednesday, we've got Thursday, we've got Friday. On location Friday at Timms Ford Lake. Perish the thought that you would pronounce that incorrectly. Trust me, I know. I did it for an hour when I was there the first time, and it did not go well. I was at Timms Ford Lake for an hour, calling it Tim Ford's Lake. Well, let me just tell you the story. Friends, hello and welcome to The Drive. It's 3:07. Glad to have you with us. We've kept Cameron Smith around. Cameron was subbing in for me. Des Dickerson did it a couple of days. Cameron's going to do it a couple of days. Hello, Cameron.
Hi.
And Cameron had an interesting take on what we expect to happen. None of us know what will happen over the next several weeks and months with regard to the presidential race, except that we're going to have a Republican candidate. We're going to have a Democrat candidate. We're probably going to have a third-party candidate on most ballots in the form of Robert F. Kennedy. And then from there, who knows? But Cameron, I was curious as to his assessment of this because right at the end of my show, which he was hosting, before we got to Brian's show, which I'm hosting,
Yep.
You see, we try to do these things. Here's what's happening. So there's Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis with no Dan Mandis. Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis is produced. The executive producer of that show is Johnny B., who's now the host. Not the permanent host, the part-time host. Then there's Chris Hand. No worries on the Chris Hand show. Then you come to the Matt Murphy show, which has been hosted by Des Dickerson and or Cameron Smith. With Matt Murphy not on vacation, Matt Murphy subbing in for Brian Wilson. We're doing this in such a way that everybody gets a glimpse into what Joe Biden's brain is like on a regular basis.
So confusing.
It's so confusing. It's like we're all inside of a washing machine.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I get to be you Friday.
You get to be me Friday.
Yeah.
And I get to be at Timms Ford Lake on Friday.
Yeah, and you said it right this time.
Have I told you this story?
You have.
So I went out to Timms Ford Lake. It's still hard to say it properly. A few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, and I had a great opportunity to sit at Twin Creeks Marina, which is a beautiful facility. There's a gorgeous restaurant out there. The lake is gorgeous. That area of the world, Winchester, Tullahoma, it's just beautiful out there. God's country. And they don't want me to tell you about it because they know that it's God's country and they don't want you coming down there. That's the bottom line. But I went down, and for the first hour, for some reason, I read it wrong, I saw it wrong, I thought it wrong. And in my mind, there was a lake.
Yeah.
And that lake was owned by a man named Ford. Tim Ford.
Tim Ford, yeah.
To be specific. And so they called it Tim Ford's Lake. That's what I thought. And so we had a little bit of a trouble connecting from the marina to home base here on Music Row in Nashville. And so I didn't get all of my little systems set up. So I did not have the membersnutrition.com super text line up and running. That's important for later in the story. So for the first 45 minutes of the Matt Murphy show, I delightfully proclaimed that we were broadcasting from Tim Ford's Lake. At what we call the 50 break, we take commercial breaks from time to time. We call this one the 50 break. That happens right around 45 or 50 on your analog clock. I had someone standing near the table looking pleasantly perturbed, if you can get that in your mind. I didn't feel like they were being aggressive, but I could tell that they had something that they needed to tell me, and they needed to tell me that something right now. And I get off air and I say, hello. And they say, are you Matt? And I said, yes. And they said that I just drove from Tullahoma to tell you something. And I said, what is that? And they said, for the love of God, it is Timms Ford Lake.
Yes.
And I said, what am I saying? I thought that's what I was saying. No, you're saying Tim Ford's Lake.
Congratulations. You've confused many Tennesseans who were previously not confused at all about Timms Ford Lake. And now they're like, wait a minute, what am I saying?
So in my head, the man's name was Tim Ford.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't understand why they would call it Timms Ford Lake when a man by the name of Tim Ford, if he possessed the lake, it would be called, I didn't get it. until finally I opened up the membersnutrition.com super text line, and there were it might have been thousands. There were a lot of texts
Helping
to me
you out?
helping me out.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I went back and I watched the progression. And so the progression was, 1209. Hey, buddy. Hey, Murph. Yeah, I think you're saying it wrong. It's Tim's Ford. It's not Tim Ford's. It's Tim's Ford. Hey, buddy. Hey, pal. Hey. No, seriously. No, dude. No, really. I'll come down there. I will hit you in your face if you keep. It just got progressively more aggressive. But anyway, we're there on Friday from 3 until 7 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Come see us at Tim's Ford Lake. The Ford in that is an actual way to cross a river, which was originally Tim's Ford River. The Timms family owned that property. I've done a lot of research on this since that show. But anyway, we're down there on Friday. So let me just do the pleasantries real quick. Cameron's here for a reason. We'll tell you what that reason is in just a moment. Jay Harper's back in the newsroom. He's gathering headlines as we speak, and we look forward to those. Of course, Chris Webber is keeping this fun and frivolity going by being behind the glass and making sure that everything that comes out of our speaker sounds as good as possible. Chris Webber, good afternoon.
Hi.
How you doing?
Yeah. You gonna be at Twins Creek Marina?
Is it Twin Creeks?
Everyone is confused.
For a second, I thought I was going to Twin Peaks, which is very, very different. It's a different dynamic from Twin Creek. Twins. Wait, damn it!
That's like me saying
Mission accomplished.
Yes,
I don't know which it is.
my name's Cam Smith. It's just enough to throw you off.
Why did you put the D on the X machine? Do you regret it?
Wait a minute. What's going
Why
on?
did you put the D on the X machine? Did you regret it? Answer the question.
No.
Mr. President.
I don't know what you're talking about, and that sounds explicit.
I've often wondered when you talk about your X machine postings, I'm Matt Murphy show.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. I would be Matt Murphy, but Matt Murphy was already taken in 2009, and so I went with Matt Murphy show, and it worked. And so I'm basically Matt Murphy show on all of my social media platforms. You went with D.
At D. Cameron Smith.
Cameron Smith. D being the first letter of your first name.
Now I understand what you're saying, and I'm no longer scared.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Are you regretful for putting the D there?
Never. You don't need to have regrets with that sort of thing, Matt. You need
You
to
got to
make
commit to the D, man.
make wise decisions always. I had a discussion with Cam, my oldest.
I'm just going to let you handle this. I'm going to go on home.
It's fine. I talk to my kids about this sort of thing. Like, you need to make wise decisions with that.
With
The D. That's what I told Cam last night. We had that discussion. It's man to man.
I'm not entirely sure what we're talking about anymore.
So, Tim Ford's Lake.
It's Tim Ford's Lake.
Twins Creek.
It's Twin. Is it Twin Creeks or Twins Creek? Damn it! It's got to be Twins. It's got to be Twin Creeks.
This is what I call hateful radio because it's just enough to confuse everyone.
I don't think anyone's enjoying this, including the people that are engaging in the conversation right now.
I'm sorry, Nashville.
What kind of conversation did you have with your son about the D?
Just that you got to make good decisions. That there's impulses are really strong. And
This is your eldest?
Yeah.
How old is he now? 15?
15.
That's a good conversation to have, actually.
You got to.
No, that's smart. That's smart. Yeah, your body's going to tell you certain things
Yes.
that your brain needs to override from time to time.
The moment
between now and death.
Yes. Oh, it's a lady.
Right. You don't
that should be a red flag right there. Oh, it's a lady. Your brain is already starting to shut off, and you need to be aware that you're going to be susceptible to. And I reminded him of a story where there was a young lady who, she's older now, but when he was younger, he encountered this young lady at my parents' place. He ended up in the top of an apple tree covered in sparkles. Okay? So I told him, hey, remember when that thing happened and that girl said that it'd be really good if she got to paint you in sparkles and then you needed to go fetch her an apple and you did it and you ended up sparkling at the top of the apple tree? Well, that's going to happen a lot if you're not careful.
Happened to me one time in college.
Yeah, really common, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as rare as you think,
Yeah.
especially later on in life. No, there will be a time where he'll be begging for those sparkles.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
oh, yeah.
But you need to wait on that. Let it come to you.
You don't want to
seek it
be
out.
covered in sparkles in the top of an apple tree. That's just not a great jumping off point.
Before we run off the rails any further, I announced to you that today is my episode 607. I try to remind you of these things. It is also LFT 130. Locks for Trump Day 130 as I continue to grow my hair out until we have a new president-elect of the United States of America. It is also day, 4 of Operation Save Joe. God, he's so good. He's so on top of it. It's such a delight to have an executive producer on top of those sound effects. I just have to tell you. Operation Save Joe is my effort to make sure that Joe Biden remains the candidate for the Democrat Party for president of the United States of America from now until November. It is the best chance that we have to save America. Now, I understand that you might have a different take on this, which is why I asked you to hold over.
Yes.
What's your thought?
I don't see how he can survive. And I mean this, that both physically and just as a candidate. The problem that Democrats have right now is they realize that this isn't based on policy or anything else. It's based on his capacity. And that means he's unfit to run for president, which means probably he's unfit to be president right now. And they realize that that's the catch-22 that they're in, but now they're looking down the ballot and they're starting to say, oh my goodness, this isn't just about Trump winning. It's about the Senate, the House, the White House, all going. And I think that's going to be enough to push them to say, we got to get Joe out.
It is a problem when you begin losing some of the you're going to lose those individuals that are most vulnerable first, vocally. And when you have people like Senator John Tester coming out from Montana, who is a very vulnerable Democrat in Montana, saying we need to do something here. When you have Sherrod Brown from Ohio coming out saying we need to do something about this. When you have Michael Bennet out of Colorado coming out and saying we need to do something. There's a reason why those particular senators are particularly Tester and Brown, because they are about to be up for re-election and they don't have a president to lean on.
Yeah, and he's in a situation where Democrats have given us this whole narrative of democracy's under threat. Like Joe Biden stands in the place of democracy itself. Well, they're full of crap because they see the writing on the wall. They see that there's not a clear path for him to win right now. If you're 10 points down in Pennsylvania, like that's not margin of error. Like you're in trouble. And they're going to lose all of this. And so I take them at their word that they actually think this is an existential threat. And if they do, then they got to get a new candidate real quick. If they don't, which is, frankly, the crap that they've been throwing out there, then they stick with Joe and get wiped out and realize that they never really cared in the first place.
Last week, I might have agreed with you, but this week I would suggest to you that they don't have an action plan that any and all of their Democrat donors and the muckety-mucks, the elites that Joe Biden talked about earlier in the week during this interview with Morning Joe, they don't have a consensus plan of action. They don't have a candidate to get behind.
Right.
The only option they have in that scenario is Kamala, right?
Probably. And, I'll use their favorite word, historic. They're in a historic position where they haven't had to deal with this.
Well, you just run her and try to hide her?
If she loses, she loses. That's fine. But maybe the down ticket fallout isn't as bad, because I'm telling you, the American people saw it with their own eyes and ears. And for Democrats to go and defend Joe Biden, they're going to say, you guys are a bunch of liars. You're telling us to not ignore our own senses, that you're just lying to us and we know it. And so we're not going to put up with that. And then they punish him, not just at the White House level, but in the House and the Senate.
But that's what the Democrats do. Sadly, 40% of America goes along with it or doesn't pay any attention to it and votes Democrat anyway. But that's what they've been doing. Donald Trump is Hitler. The borders are fine. The economy's going just swimmingly. Joe Biden created 16. All of these things that they lie about, they've been doing it. You can't lie your way out of the grocery store. I've been saying that a long time, which is a big problem for Biden and the last 3.5 years and how they lie about it. Secondarily, you're right, you can't lie your way out of what we saw on the 27th of June. However, if they have no better or other options, if Joe Biden doesn't go willingly, or his team, when Hunter Biden is his central senior advisor, that's a problem in and of itself. But if those closest to Joe Biden insist that they can weather this storm, you only have 3 weeks
to
figure this out?
Almost no time. It is a bad. Where they're going to take a bad situation and either write it out into decimation, or take a bad situation and say we'll see what we can do to make it serviceable.
You're kind of convincing me on this, because I would agree that if you get the smartest people in the room amongst the Democrats, they look at the Joe Biden prospect as almost a fate certain.
Mm-hmm.
That Biden's not going to change.
Right.
I mean, if they believed that he could, that might be a different dynamic, but he can't. The only way to change the perception of what happened on the 27th is for Biden to step up and show that he's not that guy, but he is that guy.
Yeah,
that's the problem. So he can't do it. So that's a fate certain. So do you trade the fate certain for the uncertainty of the calamity of the campaign, trying to get beyond that, trying to get beyond removing Joe and getting a new candidate in there and hoping that that candidate has the will and the way to overcome Trump?
Yeah, and it throws Trump into chaos if you get a new candidate. The campaign, not Trump personally, but it throws him into chaos because he's been planning on running against Joe. And so if he has to run against an unknown, he's got to know about him, learn about him. And anybody that's younger is going to call him out and try to make him look like the old guy.
Did you see where during his speech last night, Donald Trump, I think it was last night, that Donald Trump, he spoke for like 20 minutes on Kamala Harris? Something that he hasn't done in the past.
Yeah.
Is that a signal that maybe the Trump camp recognizes what might be going on
I
the
think
other
she's
side?
probably the only viable option that could quickly pick up and run, right?
Well, she gets the money.
Right.
She can get the delegates.
Right. I mean, I think that would be, and Joe Biden, I know that this sounds like ancient history, but remember when he said, I'm a bridge to the future? Well, he just lied about that, too.
Oh, sure.
I mean, he wants to hold on to political power. And this is my critique of the Democrats. Y'all said that Donald Trump would not leave office. He would not relinquish political power when it was time.
Look at this schmucko.
Look at this.
Yeah. All right. I have a different take on it, and I'm going to offer my take on it, and we'll see where the audience settles on it. Thank you for your take.
Thank you, buddy.
All right. Appreciate you. There's 23 after the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WT. And no Brian Wilson on the drive. Matt Murphy. And for Brian, we'd love to hear from you. 615-737-9986. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Matt Murphy for Members Nutrition. I want to tell you about the Members Nutrition difference, and I want to encourage you to go over to the Members Nutrition website. Number one, they believe at Members Nutrition that they can sell vitamins and supplements at a lower cost point, and they're doing it every single day at membersnutrition.com. Number two, they want to make these products right here in the United States of America, not from some overseas company, and they do that every single day. I encourage you to go to membersnutrition.com. You'll get 50% off your purchase price at checkout. You don't have to put in any codes. Just go to membersnutrition.com. Once again, membersnutrition.com.
A Democratic U.S. Senator making no bones about his stance on whether Joe Biden should stay in the presidential race. And opening statements came down today in Alec Baldwin's manslaughter trial. We'll have those stories at 3:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Harper. It is 3:28 right now, almost 3:29, running a little bit tardy on the drive. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We thank you for being out there. Whether you're listening on 99.7 FM, perhaps you've downloaded us on an app of your choosing. Wherever you are, wherever you're listening, we're on all of the apps where information or music or podcasts are found. iHeart is one of them. Spotify is another one. You can find us anywhere. Just look us up at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And then, of course, there's the Super Talk television option, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. We are up and running. For you masochists in the audience that want to look at this ugly mug, you may do so on a day-to-day basis. We invite you to come on over to Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. So you've lost now, and this matters to the political elites on the Democrat side of things. You've lost Stephen King. You've lost Meathead, Rob Reiner. You've lost Michael Moore. Michael Moore called out the Democrat Party for elder abuse this week. And now you have lost George Clooney. George Clooney, weeks after raising millions of dollars. This demonstrates to me that all of this is performative for these entertainment figures. They don't have any core beliefs that would compel them to support the individuals that they're supporting. It's all performative for Julia Roberts and for George Clooney and for all of these other Hollywood types that try to pretend that they understand the plight of the little people and therefore they support the Democrats. They don't mean any of it. And if you don't believe me, look at George Clooney. George Clooney knew what Joe Biden was when he held this fundraiser and raised millions of dollars on his own name for Joe Biden. Yet today, George Clooney says, well, Joe Biden can't win. We'll get into that in just a moment. We'll get your calls and your thoughts on it in just a moment. Where do the Democrats go? I don't think they know. I think it's pure speculation. What I would love to see is the Republicans suspend their national convention and just allow another week of this happening, because the last thing we want to get in the way of is this dog and pony show. But there it is. It's 3:31. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yes, it is 3:31. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Mostly sunny, 87 degrees. A full forecast and a traffic report are on the way. Today, President Biden, he's been meeting with NATO leaders in Washington for the NATO summit. But the squabbling still continuing to swirl among Democrats as to whether Mr. Biden can win re-election. So far, a majority of Democratic lawmakers are standing behind Biden, but several have come out publicly to say that he should step aside. Senate Democrats will hold a closed-door meeting tomorrow to discuss all this. ABC's Rachel Scott says that at least one U.S. Senator, Michael Bennet of Colorado, says that Biden, he needs to go.
He was very blunt. He delivered a very blunt and stark warning. He said that if President Biden remains on the ticket, he believes that Donald Trump is going to win by a landslide and that he's going to take the House and the Senate with him. Almost nobody wants to hear that here on Capitol Hill. House Democrats think that they have a pretty good chance of actually winning the majority here in the House this November. And Senate Democrats want to hang on to the majority in the Senate as well.
In a high-profile court case, the prosecution and defense both laying out their case and opening statements of Alec Baldwin's manslaughter trial in New Mexico. Here's ABC's Jason Nathanson.
Special Prosecutor Erlinda Johnson saying Alec Baldwin bears responsibility for the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins, shot and killed by a gun in Baldwin's hand on the set of the movie Rust in 2021.
The defendant didn't do a gun safety check with that inexperienced armorer.
She also says he missed safety training, and evidence will show Baldwin pulled the trigger on the gun, something Baldwin's lawyer Alex Spiro says isn't true, but also Baldwin was told the gun couldn't hurt anyone.
This was an unspeakable tragedy, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. He was an actor acting.
That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Matt Murphy for Members Nutrition. I want to tell you about the Members Nutrition difference, and I want to encourage you to go over to the Members Nutrition website. Number one, they believe at Members Nutrition that they can sell vitamins and supplements at a lower cost point, and they're doing it every single day at membersnutrition.com. Number two, they want to make these products right here in the United States of America, not from some overseas company, and they do that every single day. I encourage you to go to membersnutrition.com. You'll get 50% off your purchase price at checkout. You don't have to put in any codes. Just go to membersnutrition.com. Once again, membersnutrition.com.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson today. Thank you for being with us. A beautiful day in Music City. Gorgeous on Music Row. Hope it's pretty where you are. It's hot. Of course it's hot. It's the middle of July. It should be hot. 3:38, almost 3:39. Good afternoon. Join us, 615-737-9986. You can turn a monologue into a dialogue by dialing that telephone number and speaking truth to power. You can also hit us up on the membersnutrition.com super text line. You're invited to do that either way. So you're losing multitudes of Democrats on Capitol Hill if you're Joe Biden. Now, understand, I am fully engaged in Operation Save Joe. We need Joe Biden on that ballot. We want Joe Biden on that ballot. We need, and the danger here, in all seriousness, the effort is to see a secure future for ourselves and our children and our grandchildren with regard to the Constitution of the United States and how we do things in this country. The freedoms and liberties that we have enjoyed ourselves, we want to continue those freedoms and liberties as opposed to, quote unquote, fundamentally transform the United States of America, as Barack Obama and his minions, Joe Biden included, have demonstrated that they want to do. What do they think? What do they think we think they mean? Well, I think we think they mean exactly what they do mean. They want more centralized control of government in Washington, D.C. in the form of what we would describe as socialism or communism. That said, we fight against that. And the best way to fight against that is to make sure that we win in November. And the best way to make sure we win in November is for Joe Biden to be on that ballot. Operation Save Joe. But no one said that it would be easy, especially considering how bad Joe Biden has gotten and how willing Democrats are now to admit it. The same Democrats that looked us in the face and said that these were cheap fakes are now willing to admit that Joe Biden is as bad as we have said he has been for these many months and years. These same political leftists that swore to us not to believe our lying eyes or not to believe our lying ears, but to believe them when they told us that everything was just hunky-dory. These same liberals are now coming out and having to answer questions by a now suddenly curious media about where Joe is and what does he know and what doesn't he know and will he be able to function moving forward. And he's given a couple of Biden-esque speeches over the last several days that do nothing to assuage our fears that he has lost it. We've known this for years. You and I have known this for years, and we need to be gentle to those Democrats who have not absorbed this information because they're getting their information from lying news organizations and lying Democrats. Okay? So a lot of the leftists that perhaps tune in to this radio show from time to time and think that we're just being foolish and that we're overstating the case, they're now coming to the realization that we've been right all along. And I think it's important that we handle this with kid gloves. We don't need to wag our fingers and scream, "I told you so," necessarily to these people. We just need to help them understand the best way out of this is to secure a victory for Donald J. Trump and get this country back on the right track. Now, 40% of America, they're not going to do that anyway. They would vote for a dead Joe Biden over a very much living and thriving Donald Trump. Sadly, it is true. It's the state of politics today. But it's all about that middle 20% and winning the vote in that middle 20%, or, as importantly, watching as the enthusiasm gap widens between conservatives and libertarians and the Democrats that don't feel like they have a candidate to vote for to begin with. And we also must not rest on our laurels. I have been saying it for weeks, if not months now. I understand that the victories are coming hot and heavy. I understand that you feel like the debate performance of Joe Biden almost virtually secures Donald Trump a victory in November. Do not do this to yourself and do not do this to this country. There still must be a massive voter turnout. The vote must be a landslide to secure it. Do I suggest that the same type of nonsense that happened in 2020 could possibly happen in 2024? Yes, I do. I most certainly do. And we best gird ourselves against it, lest we see it repeated, COVID or no. The things that happened in 2020 happened under the cloak of darkness and under the cloak of COVID during that year. They don't have the COVID anymore, and we have exposed the darkness to the light for the most part in how they managed to accomplish what they did. Most of it, sadly, was not illegal. Immoral, of course. Unethical, you betcha. Illegal, sadly, no. But we need to fight against it nonetheless, and do not rest until November is here. That said, Joe Biden has seen his set of defections, and some might ask why I would focus on the op-ed that George Clooney wrote to the New York Times at all. And to that, I would answer, it's not that we care about what George Clooney has to say about anything. It's that they care. And it's important to understand where their mindset is, to understand where they're going with regard to Joe Biden. I admit that I have gone back and forth on this. I don't call it waffling because you don't flip a waffle. I do call it pancaking because you flip a pancake. And I have pancaked on this over the last several weeks. Do they keep him or do they not keep him? I believe that my Biden replacement theory was correct. I believe that they put him on that stage as early as they did against Donald Trump as a test run to see if Joe Biden had the goods to get to November. And he clearly, obviously does not. What I did not anticipate. So after the debate performance, if you believe my Biden replacement theory, which was and is that they put him on stage that early to see if he could do it. And if he can't do it, they've got to get someone that can. Well, he obviously couldn't do it. And so if my theory is correct, they're in the process of finding that person that can. Here's what I did not count on in my analysis, and I'll admit it. I did not count on Team Biden digging their heels in the way that they have and refusing to accept the reality of what we all saw on the stage. Whether it's Dr. Jill Biden, or Hunter, who has somehow emerged as a senior campaign advisor for the President of the United States. The President of the United States of America is literally taking campaign advice from a crackhead. The President of the United States of America is taking campaign advice from a crackhead. From a person who smoked large amounts of crack not so many years ago. From a person who was credibly accused of dumping his cocaine in the White House not so long ago. That is a senior advisor to the President of the United States of America. What else would you call him? But it's his son, Matt. Oh, shut up with that. So we care what George Clooney has to say about this because George Clooney has been able to use his name and his fame to organize major fundraising for the Democrat nominee over the years. In 2012, he raised millions of dollars for Barack Obama. In 2016, he raised millions of dollars and drew interest to the campaign of Hillary Clinton. In 2020, he did the same thing for Joe Biden. Just weeks ago, he had the largest fundraising effort in the history of the Democrat Party in California. And he has now written an op-ed piece in the New York Times saying goodbye to Joe. I'm going to read you some of that piece. And some of it's sickening because George Clooney is all in on the Democrats and he's all in on loving him some Joe. But through this, he tells the truth. And I suppose as much as I would fault George Clooney for thinking he knows a thing about politics, I'll give him credit for telling the truth. He's saying things that Democrats in Washington, D.C. won't say. He's saying things that Nancy Pelosi won't even say, and that Chuck Schumer won't say, and that other party leadership in Washington, D.C. refused to say. And it's simple as this. Joe Biden has lost it. Whatever he ever had, he doesn't have it anymore. Quoting Clooney, "I love Joe Biden," he says. as a senator, as a vice president, and as president. I consider him a friend, and I believe in him, believe in his character, believe in his morals. In the last 4 years, he's won many of the battles he's faced. But the one battle he cannot win is the fight against time. None of us can. It's devastating to say it. But the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe big effing deal Biden of 2010. He wasn't even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate. Was he tired? Yes. A cold? Maybe. But our party leaders need to stop telling us that 51 million people didn't see what we just saw. We're also terrified by the prospect of a second Trump term that we've opted to ignore every warning sign. The George Stephanopoulos interview only reinforced what we saw the week before. As Democrats, we collectively hold our breath or turn down the volume whenever we see the president, whom we respect, walk off Air Force One or walk back to a mic to answer an unscripted question. Is it fair to point these things out? It has to be. This is about age, nothing more. And also nothing that can be reversed. We're not going to win in November with this president. On top of that, we aren't going to win the House. And we're going to lose the Senate. This isn't only my opinion. It's the opinion of every senator and Congress member and governor whom I've spoken to in private. Every single one, irrespective of what he or she is saying publicly. Now, I don't care if you respect George Clooney as a political pundit, but I respect his honesty. He's saying out loud what needs to be said. Now, understand something. I'm conducting Operation Save Joe here, people. I don't want anybody to know any of these things, least of all Democrats, because they might actually do the thing necessary to get back into a competitive race. But the reality is we don't have a president of the United States anymore. The man has lost it to the point that we ought to be very scared, not over what the voters are going to do necessarily in November. I believe that is, I wouldn't call it a foregone conclusion because I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch, but I certainly believe that it's leading that way, especially if Joe Biden is the candidate. I'm a little more afraid of what happens next month rather than next year. We don't have an elected commander-in-chief that has the ability to function in the White House anymore. And people closest around him that call themselves personal friends of the President of the United States are now saying that out loud. Clooney continues, and I'll get into some of the continuation in just a moment. It is a blunt assessment of the mental abilities of Joe Biden at this moment. And it ought to scare the hell out of every single one of us, and it's coming out of the mouth of a Democrat. It's 3:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Matt Murphy for Members Nutrition. I want to tell you about the Members Nutrition difference, and I want to encourage you to go over to the Members Nutrition website. Number one, they believe at Members Nutrition that they can sell vitamins and supplements at a lower cost point, and they're doing it every single day at membersnutrition.com. Number two, they want to make these products right here in the United States of America, not from some overseas company, and they do that every single day. I encourage you to go to membersnutrition.com. You'll get 50% off your purchase price at checkout. You don't have to put in any codes. Just go to membersnutrition.com. Once again, membersnutrition.com.
Nancy Pelosi, she's deflecting questions as to whether Biden should stay in the race. A former NBA star pleads guilty to wire fraud, and a deadly car crash involving an officer from Nashville's police department this morning. We'll have those stories at 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Harper. Nancy Pelosi also, getting a bit testy. I won't get in front of the newscast there, but we'll talk about that in the second hour of The Drive with no Brian Wilson. Matt Murphy in for Brian today until 7 o'clock. We'll take your telephone calls as well. Finish up on this opinion piece from George Clooney in the New York Times. While I don't have a lot of respect for his political opinions, I have a lot of respect for his honesty because he's telling Democrats the truth. Will they listen to him? No, I don't think so. And that's good news for the constitutional republic. More coming up. 3 more hours to go on The Drive on Super Talk.
Good afternoon. It's 4 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Mostly sunny, 87 degrees, a full forecast, and another traffic report are coming up. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi declining to say if she believes the president should continue in the presidential race. In an interview on MSNBC, Pelosi acknowledging the internal debate over his candidacy and urging Democrats who want Biden to step aside to stay quiet, at least until this week's NATO summit wraps up. ABC's Rachel Bade, she's on Capitol Hill.
People talk about Jill Biden, how she's ultimately the one who can convince Joe Biden to step aside, but Nancy Pelosi is very close with Joe Biden. She was sort of gunning for him behind the scenes during the 2020 primary. So she's been in his corner the whole time, and yet now Democrats are looking to her to sort of lead the charge in pushing him out.
A guilty plea for a former NBA basketball player banned in a sports betting scandal here earlier this year. Here's ABC's Derek Dennis reporting.
Former Toronto Raptors player Jontay Porter, already banned for life from the league for gambling, has pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy, admitting in Brooklyn federal court to tipping off gamblers to games he was going to rig. Those tips amounting to $1 million in winnings for bettors, prosecutors say, in exchange for Porter clearing his own gambling debts. As part of his plea, Porter will owe an estimated $456,000 in fines and restitution. The former basketball player telling the judge, "I know what I did was wrong and unlawful, and I'm deeply sorry." His sentencing is set for December 18th, where he could get between 5 and 20 years in prison.
Here in Nashville, Metro Police have released details of a deadly crash involving a police officer early this morning.
It was around 2:15 this morning when 37-year-old and 12-year Metro Nashville Police Department veteran Homicide Sergeant Trevor Von Dolan was headed to a suicide investigation. A Toyota Camry veered into his lane of travel on Bell Road at Mountain View Road. The Camry had run over the right curb, veered back to the left, and into the northbound lane in which Sergeant Von Dolan was driving. The Camry hitting the police Ford Edge SUV head on. Images from the scene show it was a violent collision, car parts and fluids from both vehicles covering the road. The driver of the Camry died at the scene. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Sergeant Von Dolan, he is still hospitalized with serious injuries. The name of the driver who was in the Camry is yet to be released. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather, they're next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
The Guaranteed Offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Drive. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson this week. It is 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A beautiful, albeit hot, afternoon in the Music City. All across the state of Tennessee, we thank you for being a part of our day today. Whatever time you give us, we're certainly appreciative of that. We'll try to get you home safe and sound, and we'll try to give you a few tidbits of information, as Brian Wilson likes to say, to drive. The liberals crazy. We've got telephone lines open and available for you, 615-737-9986, going over some of the defections on the part of Camp Biden as he continues to bleed supporters over the last several days and several weeks since his disastrous debate performance against former President Donald J. Trump on June 27th. Nancy Pelosi has hedged her bets as to where she is regarding this process, wanting it to, quote-unquote, play itself out. I'll have some more audio. I know Jay Harper was talking about Ms. Pelosi moments ago in the newscast. We'll have more audio from her coming up in just a couple of minutes. Also, Fried Chicken Cohen coming up. Kentucky Fried Cohen had a few things to say about Joe Biden's disastrous performance as well. He is the congressional representative from over in Memphis. And we'll find out what he has to say in just a moment as well. You on the phone, 615-737-9986. We'd love to hear from you. There are other matters going on. Local elections are set to get really robustly underway in the state of Tennessee as we've got our primaries coming up on August 1st. I'll talk about that at some point today. There's a story coming out of Duke University that I want to touch on. Alec Baldwin is on trial. We'll get into that in just a few moments. Just a few of the things that we'll cover on The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. In the meantime, Donald Trump has finally spoken out about the effort in the House of Representatives, specifically involving Anna Paulina Luna. If you don't know about this this push, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna has pushed to hold Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States of America, in inherent contempt for refusing to release subpoenaed information as a part of an investigation that the House of Representatives is doing toward Joe Biden's health. House Republicans subpoenaed information, specifically audio tapes, between Special Counsel Robert Hur and President Joe Biden. The backstory: Joe Biden sat down with Robert Hur to discuss the fact that he had classified material stored at his home in Delaware and stored at a private office in Washington, D.C., which violated the law. Very similar in fashion to the manner in which Donald Trump reportedly was accused of holding classified information at Mar-a-Lago. So one did something that resulted in an FBI raid of his home and subsequent charges against him. That would be Donald Trump. The other, Joe Biden, did the same thing over a much more broad time frame. He did all of this while he was a senator and a vice president. He wasn't even president of the United States, and he gets nothing done to him. And the reasoning that Special Counsel Robert Hur gave was that Joe Biden's frailty, his lack of an ability to remember certain aspects of what was going on, his inability to remember basic aspects of what's been going on over the past several weeks at the time that the interview was conducted, made it impossible for the Special Counsel Robert Hur to believe that any jury in America would convict Joe Biden, saying that Joe Biden comes off as an affable but forgetful and, essentially doddering old man who the jury would look at sympathetically because of his lack of ability to remember and because of his age and infirmity. This goes to the heart of what we saw on stage June 27th. And that interview was conducted many, many months before June 27th, obviously. So there is a renewed interest in hearing this audio. We've seen a transcript, a cleaned up transcript. But the House of Representatives wants more than just a transcript, and they are due more than just a transcript because they're an equal body of government. And so, in an effort to get this audio recording, which exists, they subpoenaed Attorney General Merrick Garland demanding that he turn it over because the special counsel, Robert Hur, was acting at the direction of the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland has refused to turn it over. They subpoenaed the information, and he refused the subpoena. And so Congress has found the Attorney General in contempt of Congress. Contempt of Congress does not really have any penalty associated with it. The threat of contempt of Congress for a member of the executive branch isn't really a threat at all, unless you're willing to go another step. And the next step is involved in inherent contempt. If you hold Merrick Garland, if you hold a vote and hold Merrick Garland in inherent contempt of Congress, that gives the sergeant at arms in the Congress of the United States of America the ability to arrest and hold the Attorney General of the United States of America, Merrick Garland. This has been done before. Not with the Attorney General, but with other agents of the executive branch. It has not been done any time in modern history. Anna Paulina Luna is attempting to see a vote held in order to hold Merrick Garland in inherent contempt of Congress, meaning that he could be arrested by the sergeant at arms. Today, Donald Trump stepped out mere hours ago and agreed with Anna Paulina Luna. On his social media platform, Truth Social, Donald Trump saying, "I agree with Anna Paulina Luna and the many House members who think Merrick Garland should be held in inherent contempt for refusing to release the Biden tapes, even though they were subpoenaed. The House Republicans should also subpoena deranged Jack Smith and look into his illegal investigation of me immediately. And they should pass the SAVE Act immediately to stop illegals from voting in our elections. Republicans must get tough about stopping weaponization and cheating. They may just be coming for me in my elections today, but they'll come for all of the Republicans very soon if they succeed." That's Donald Trump, and we're going to talk about the SAVE Act coming up in just a couple of minutes on Super Talk 99.7 WTN and why in the world the Democrats would be against preventing illegal aliens from voting. I can't imagine why the Democrats would be against something like that. But before we get too far away from it, I want to circle back to George Clooney and his opinion piece in the New York Times. Once again, I don't have very much respect. I don't know George Clooney, obviously. I don't think most of us know George Clooney and what he does or does not know about political elections. I do know that most of these Hollywood elitists that are worth millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, they are mollycoddled and they are insulated from the real world to such a degree that I don't hold a lot of stock in anything they have to say about political matters. They don't live in the real world. This is nothing against them. I don't have anything against necessarily George Clooney. This is going to come off, I know some of you are going to get very annoyed when I say this. I don't hold anything against dumb people that vote for Democrats. This is America. I believe in a nation where you can vote stupidly if you so desire. So if George Clooney wants to be dumb about his vote, then that's his right as an American, as it is all of our right to vote in a manner of our choosing, to vote consistent with your core beliefs, your conscience, your truth or your mistruth, your informed vote or your uninformed vote. It counts the same. That is, some would suggest a frailty in our system, but it is our system nonetheless. And it's the best one going on God's green earth until you find me a better one. So I don't begrudge George Clooney necessarily for being a Democrat. It makes sense, right? Everything's going great in George Clooney's world. George Clooney wants to believe, and he gets the liberty of believing, that these leftists in Washington, D.C. want the best for the American people. He doesn't know any better. He doesn't know that Joe Biden is a useful idiot for the powers that be that are advancing the cause of socialism that has ruined so many great countries over the years across this globe. George Clooney doesn't know any better. He lives in a world that doesn't see the realities and the consequences of Democrat policies. As a matter of fact, I forgive the multi-gajillionaires a lot more quickly than I do the average folks for voting for Democrat policies because they don't see the ramifications of their actions. The George Clooney's or the Rosie O'Donnells or even the Sonia Sotomayors to a certain degree, they don't understand what the world would be like without our ability to personal defense and the Second Amendment of the Constitution in America. They don't need to because they have personal bodyguards. They don't need to bother with the question of whether or not they want to arm themselves in their homes, on their persons, because they have people doing that for them, because they have the ability to pay for that, because they're rich. They're rich. And they feel as if they, even if the worst were to happen, would be protected because they're kind of a part of the, for lack of a better way of saying it, the bourgeoisie. That said, as I do not begrudge him his political beliefs, I disagree with them strongly. But I do appreciate his willingness to be honest. As we related in the first hour of the drive with Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy in today, Clooney wrote an op-ed piece in which he said, the one battle he, being Joe Biden, cannot win is the fight against time. None of us can. It's devastating to say it, but the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe Big Effin' Deal Biden from 2010. He was not even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate. Was he tired? Yes. A cold? Maybe. But our party leaders need to stop telling us that 51 million did not see what we saw. We were also terrified by the prospect of a second Trump term that we've opted to ignore every warning sign. The George Stephanopoulos interview only reinforced what we saw the week before. As Democrats, we collectively hold our breath or turn down the volume whenever we see the president, whom we respect, walk off Air Force One or walk back to a mic to answer an unscripted question. Is it fair to point these things out? It has to be. Clooney continues, this is about age, nothing more, but also nothing that can be reversed. We're not going to win in November with this president. On top of that, we won't win the House, and we're going to lose the Senate. This isn't only my opinion. This is the opinion of every senator and Congress member and governor who I've spoken with in private. Every single one, irrespective of what he or she is saying publicly. Now, that's a big thing. George Clooney is admitting that Republicans, what we've been saying all along, and conservatives and libertarians alike have been saying all along, has been correct. And that liberals are lying publicly to the American people. Elected liberals lie regularly in front of the camera about how Joe Biden's doing. They did it 3 weeks ago. More on that in just a moment. Clooney continues. We love to talk about how the Republican Party has ceded all power and all the traits that made it so formidable with Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush to a single person who seeks to hold on to the presidency. Yet most of our members of Congress are opting to wait and see if the dam breaks. But the dam has broken. We can put our heads in the sand and pray for a miracle in November, or we can speak the truth. It is disingenuous at best to argue that Democrats have already spoken with their vote and therefore the nomination is settled and done when we just received new and upsetting information. And this is an interesting point. Clooney says, we all think Republicans should abandon their nominee now that he's been convicted of 34 felonies. That's new and upsetting information as well. Top Democrats Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, and senators, representatives, and other candidates who face losing in November need to ask this president to voluntarily step aside. And then he goes on to talk about all of the horror show stories that some are suggesting would happen if that would be the case. I absolutely love it. I love chaos within the Democrat Party. I've never seen Democrats acting more like Republicans than they are right now. And I say that with love, or at least a little more love for the Republican Party than I certainly have for the Democrat Party. I don't belong to either. I don't characterize myself as either. I observe these things relatively neutrally. And let me tell you something, folks. There's never been chaos like we see in the Democrat Party in my lifetime. Never. They genuinely don't know what to do. Therefore, it is a fool's errand to suggest that we can speculate exactly what they are going to do. all it is at that point is pure speculation. I do not believe, as I sit here today at 4:22 in the afternoon Central Time on July 10th, that they have the ability in 3.5 weeks to accomplish what they would need to accomplish, especially considering that Joe Biden has no interest in dropping out. At least Joe Biden's people have no interest in him dropping out. Ron Klein and Zients, the chief of staff, and Jill Biden and Hunter Biden and whomever else is advising Joe Biden, whoever has Joe Biden's ear, they are not bending it toward dropping out, because in doing so, they lose their own political clout and power. And they don't want to do that. I said as much about a Republican a few years ago. In Alabama, a state that I lived in for 20 years, Kay Ivey was the lieutenant governor when Robert Bentley had to resign his governorship in disgrace because of an affair that he had with his chief of staff, a woman by the name of Rebecca Mason, who was 30 years his junior. It was all seedy and gross, and I won't go through the salacious details, but except to say Robert Bentley resigned in disgrace and Kay Ivey became the governor. She then subsequently ran for and won a full term. It was widely expected, because of her age and because of what we all knew was her physical limitations and mental infirmity, that she would not run for a second full term as governor of the state of Alabama. Yet she did. And it was fully because the people that surrounded her as governor felt like they could insulate her from the prying questions of the press, to the point that the people would not genuinely understand her age and infirmity. And it worked. And she continues to be the governor of the state of Alabama. It will not work for Joe Biden, inasmuch as the American people are seeing through this. Whether he remains as candidate remains to be seen. It's 4:24 on Super Talk.
Hey, it's Dan Mandis, and I am so glad that California Closets has fixed my closet catastrophe. After exact measuring and planning, they came over and got to work. Yeah, once it was all plotted out on their 3D CAD system, the pieces are measured, cut, and precisely installed into my space. It was clean, fast, and professional, and above all, my new closets look and function great. Now, this was my dormer, and now this is my new dormer thanks to California Closets. Look at all of this added space for shirts and shoes, you name it, and it is cut so precisely, simply amazing. And my old closet that has now been reborn as the ultimate in style and functionability, making the best use of the space that I had. They can work on just about anything: bedrooms, garages, home offices, closets, pantries, and so much more. Find them online, CaliforniaClosets.com, and see what they can do for you. You can schedule a free design consultation. Mention my name, CaliforniaClosets.com.
Nancy Pelosi earlier was a staunch supporter of the president staying in the race. Now she's starting to deflect questions on that issue. And we'll also have today's closing money news. That's coming up at 4:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Jay Harper. And that's coming up in just a couple of minutes on Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive. My name is Matt Murphy, here till 7 o'clock. Hot outside. One of those days where I'm glad I work indoors in the nice air-conditioned cool, the friendly confines of our palatial studios here at the dead end of Music Row, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. How cold is it in there?
It's about room temperature.
Yeah?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah. You look like you're having a great day so far. I haven't talked to you.
Yeah, fantastic.
I've just been rolling 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I haven't even had a chance to really speak to you since the Cameron Smith debacle at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I'm just checking on you. Operation Save Joe.
I knew you were going to do that.
Entire thing was a setup.
I knew it.
Oh, Cubby, let's get to you before we get to the news. What's up, Cubby?
How you doing? You were talking about that governor. I just got in my car driving into work, and I remember Dianne Feinstein, when she was alive, couldn't make a decision for herself, and I'm wondering why no one's playing those videos on TV or on social media.
Well, yeah, I mean, and she's not the only one. I mean, I could give you a laundry list of Republicans and Democrats, Cubby, that outlived their usefulness in the United States Senate in particular. Rare is it the senator that decides on their own that they will go quietly into that good night, because being a United States Senator is the best job in the world. Being a United States Senator is the best job in the world. I've seen it with my own eyes. I'll tell you a little more about this, and I'll give you the list of individuals that stayed way past their usefulness. And it ends with Dianne Feinstein, but it does not start there. We'll do that in just a moment. It is 4:31. Your telephone calls as well. Your membersnutrition.com super text, 615-737-9986. It's The Drive on Super Talk.
Good afternoon. We're coming up on 4:31. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Plenty of sunshine, 88 degrees, a complete weather forecast, and another traffic reporter on the way. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi declining to say if she believes the president should continue in the presidential race. In an interview on MSNBC, Pelosi acknowledged that the internal debate over his candidacy and urged Democrats who want Biden to step aside to stay quiet. Well, at least until this week's NATO summit is over. ABC's Rachel Bade, she reports from Capitol Hill.
There's a lot of Democrats up here on the Hill who thought they were going to come out and go on record. But then there was this sort of counter-whipping operation that the Biden campaign organized. And ultimately, a lot of people, they were too afraid to do it. What Pelosi is doing here is she's giving them cover to say, wait a second, this conversation is not done. This is sending a warning signal to the White House that Democratic leaders themselves are not convinced that he's the person that should be leading the ticket.
Let's go ahead and get to today's closing money news. Here's Dave Packer.
From ABC News Wall Street Now. It's a new milestone for the S&P, which has now crossed the 5,600 mark for the first time. Investors are inspired by Fed Chair Jerome Powell's remarks to the House and Senate about an upcoming interest rate cut. This makes 37 times just this year that the S&P has set an all-time high. The Dow added 429 points. The Nasdaq gained 218. Investors will also be paying attention to the next inflation reading out tomorrow. Economists are expecting inflation will be 3.1% higher for the year, lower than last month's reading of 3.3%. The tax preparation and financial software company Intuit is laying off about 10% of its workforce, or about 1,800 employees, as part of a reorganization plan that will add more artificial intelligence into its products and services. BMW is recalling more than 390,000 vehicles in the U.S. because they were made with airbag inflators that could explode, flinging sharp metal objects into the face of the driver.
That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Matt Murphy for Members Nutrition. I want to tell you about the Members Nutrition difference, and I want to encourage you to go over to the Members Nutrition website. Number one, they believe at Members Nutrition that they can sell vitamins and supplements at a lower cost point, and they're doing it every single day at membersnutrition.com. Number two, they want to make these products right here in the United States of America, not from some overseas company, and they do that every single day. I encourage you to go to membersnutrition.com. You'll get 50% off your purchase price at checkout. You don't have to put in any codes. Just go to membersnutrition.com. Once again, membersnutrition.com.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, lots to get into. Man, oh man, we're already an hour and a half down. I feel like we're just getting warmed up. We need to talk about the SAVE Act. A vote just happened on the floor of the House of Representatives today on the SAVE Act, and I'm working on, I think we have Scott Desjardins scheduled for 5:35 this afternoon. I'm working on as many representatives from the state of Tennessee as I can get on to discuss their vote in the affirmative on the SAVE Act. It's a pretty simple measure as voted on by the House of Representatives today. Are you in favor of or against illegal aliens voting in federal elections? Yes or no? And actually, I should say, are you in favor of preventing it? Are you in favor of making it illegal? Yes or no? Because the yays were there to make it illegal to vote in a federal election if you are not legally in the United States of America and legally eligible to vote. 198 Democrats voted against this piece of legislation. And I want to explore why just a little bit later on in the show. We also have the mechanism by which Democrats can dispatch of Joe Biden. I'll walk through that. I don't believe that they will do this. I think everything hinges on his handlers and whether or not they are willing to release the delegates for the Democrats. Either way, it is absolute chaos for the Democrats over the next several weeks, and this is delicious, and I love it, and I've popped the popcorn, and I'm absolutely here for it. In the meantime, Bailey is on the line out of Smyrna. Hello, Bailey. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, I'm off work, so that's, the biggest thing.
Well, that's a good thing. I like that.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the weather, and I just want everybody to know, it's hot out there. If you're protesting something that doesn't really matter or actually even exist, for that matter, an ideal or an identity crisis you're having, just drink some water and just keep it cool. And then that brings me to my next thing. Who remembers the weather last week? Nobody does. Nobody does. They're lying to us. It's not hot. Just work outside a little bit, get acclimated, drink some water. We're human. We didn't have AC for the thousands of years before this. So, anyways, enjoy your weeks. The week is coming up. It's almost Thursday, and it's going to be Friday.
I'll have what he's having.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Bailey, whatever you're having, would you pour two more and come on over to 10 Music Circle East?
Oh, boy.
Just put them at the front stoop. Put enough ice in there because contrary to what you just said, it is hot out there. I don't think by any standard it's not hot. But, Bailey he's off, enjoying himself, having a good time.
I bet he made a quick pit stop on the way home from work. Sounded like.
Uber's your friend, Bailey.
Yep.
Remember that.
Definitely.
Remember that. Always want to utilize the things around you to make sure that you keep yourself and others safe and sound. And we appreciate you calling the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Anybody calling in, regardless of your state, we do appreciate you. 615-737-9986. Thank you, Bailey, for the call. Speaking of people who sound drunk most of the time, Nancy Pelosi was questioned about Joe Biden's mental state. I think Jay Harper made mention of this frustration that Nancy shared with regard to the manner in which she was being questioned. Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke to Rachel Scott in the hallway, saying that she would not make comments in the hallway about the fate of our nation or the fate of Joe Biden. And she finished off her commentary with a thought about English-speaking peoples. Here's Nancy.
President Biden, what you said this morning, I'm not having any conversation with you.
A little bit difficult to hear.
What I talked to the president about. I don't do this either.
Do you believe that?
I never do. So it's nothing new.
I understand, Madam Speaker. Do you believe that him waiting so long to make this decision could harm the
I'm not making any comments in the hallway about the fate of our nation.
Okay. I'm not making any comments.
Who can win in November?
I think he can.
Do you believe he should run for re-election?
I'm not speaking English to you.
I'm not going to be making any statements about any of that right now.
Did you hear what she said there? I know it's difficult to hear on radio. Nancy Pelosi speaking to Rachel Scott, a reporter on Capitol Hill, said, am I speaking English to you? How offensive to the non-English speaking members of the press corps on Capitol Hill that Nancy Pelosi would go there. I think they should file a grievance of some sort. Pelosi, a bit testy with the nature of the questions. Somewhere, I'm sure that we have liberals literally shaking as to how she refused to acknowledge her white English-speaking privilege. She should pander harder than that. I would agree. Some of you are asking, and I got a question on the membersnutrition.com super text line, and I appreciate all of you joining in on the show in that regard. Oh, many of you are worried about Bailey, Bob's brother. Yeah, Bob's brother. I hope to see Bob this weekend, by the way. If you know about Bob, then you are a all-day listener on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Remember Bob? Bob got into my hiney about discussing the FBI, the CIA, and other intelligence organizations the last time we were at Timms Ford Lake in lovely Winchester, Tennessee. Well, we are going back to Timms Ford Lake in Winchester this Friday, and I hope that Bob is there so that maybe we can talk about national intelligence. Anyway, many of you want to know what's in Bailey's water. 2623 said, I love Bailey. Scott says, wow, Bailey has had too many Baileys. Kevin writes in and says, long day at the office. Trevor writes in and says, Bailey, Bob's brother. And Renee, is he drunk? LOL. I don't know if Bailey was drunk or not. Bailey was having a good time, and I appreciate that, Bailey. In the meantime, how does all of this work if Joe Biden doesn't buy into being replaced? The question is then, and I'll go through it, and I admit that I had to look up some of the intricacies because I don't understand the Democrat Party platform either. I don't understand the Democrat Party rules. I don't pretend to. I am not a Democrat, nor do I vote for Democrats, so I wouldn't know what to tell you. But I looked it up so as to inform you as to how this would work. Can President Joe Biden be replaced at the top of the Democrat Party presidential ticket even after the presidential primaries have concluded? The answer is yes. It is a relatively easy process, assuming that Joe Biden decides on his own to step aside. However, if he does not do that, it gets a little bit complicated. Either way, the process would be opening the door to extreme political upheaval and uncertainty amongst the Democrats, and I'm here for it. Like I say, I've popped the popcorn. So how does this work? Joe Biden won most of the really all of the political primaries, and he has won most of the committed delegates. The way that these things work, these are party functions, right? The Republican Party puts on their convention. The Democrat Party puts on their convention. Before they get to the convention process, they have state primaries. And each individual state, per their party platform, they vote for who they want the nominee to be. This is not a function of the state. The state facilitates it, but it is not a state function. It is a party function. Meaning the parties set up the rules the way the parties want to set up the rules. The state just makes sure, whatever state we're talking about, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, California, Pennsylvania, whatever, the individual states manage the process by which people vote to ensure fairness and security in the process. And I know that that amuses many of you considering 2020, but just bear with me for a moment. So to ensure fairness and security, the states run the show. But it's not the state's show. They're just the ones calling balls and strikes. They're like the umpires. The baseball game is conducted by the individual party that we're talking about, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. The Libertarian Party, just as an example, they do things very differently. They have a party convention by which they have a nomination process within that convention that selects their candidate for president of the United States or whatever office is being sought. In the Republican and Democrat party functions, they hold primaries in each individual state. Those primaries produce delegates, and whomever wins the most delegates have those pledged delegates go to the convention, and that's when you see the various states on the convention floor. And we all know the pomp and circumstance. You guys remember, typically back in the early days when I was just growing up, I absolutely loved this stuff where you would show. I grew up in Georgia, so you would wait through Alabama and through Connecticut and through Delaware and A, B, C, D, E, through Florida until you got to Georgia. And then they would flash over and there would be the big thing standing up on the convention floor that says Georgia, and they'd focus in on whomever they had appointed to be the spokesperson. Mr. Speaker, the great state of Georgia, the Empire State of the South, the Peach State, home of greats like whomever, Ty Cobb or whatever it might be. We commit all 267 of Georgia's delegates to the next president of the United States of America, Ronald Wilson Reagan. Yay! Did you know that those pledged delegates, per the Democrat Party rules, have no obligation to vote for Joe Biden? They've made a promise. They are expected to honor that promise. But they are under no legal boundary to do so. We'll describe exactly what could happen if Joe Biden decided to release them and what could happen if he decided not to release them. That's coming up. Plus your telephone calls. It's 450. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey, it's Dan Mandis, and I am so glad that California Closets has fixed my closet catastrophe. After exact measuring and planning, they came over and got to work. Yeah, once it was all plotted out on their 3D CAD system, the pieces are measured, cut, and precisely installed into my space. It was clean, fast, and professional, and above all, my new closets look and function great. Now, this was my dormer, and now this is my new dormer thanks to California Closets. Look at all of this added space for shirts and shoes, you name it, and it is cut so precisely, simply amazing. And my old closet that has now been reborn as the ultimate in style and functionability, making the best use of the space that I had. They can work on just about anything: bedrooms, garages, home offices, closets, pantries, and so much more. Find them online, CaliforniaClosets.com, and see what they can do for you. You can schedule a free design consultation. Mention my name, CaliforniaClosets.com.
Another top Hollywood fundraiser is urging President Biden to get out of the race. The American astronauts that are stuck aboard the International Space Station, well, they held a press conference today. And more airbag recalls. We'll have those stories at 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I have a very quick question for Jay Harper and for Before Jay's News and for Chris Webber.
Yes,
if I
sir.
gave you the opportunity, either of you the opportunity to go to space for free, would you do it?
Oh, gosh.
All right, hold on. You don't have to answer right now. Contemplate the question, and maybe we'll get back to it. Space for free. Would you do it? I'm a solid yes. We'll find out about Weber and Harper in just a moment, right after the newscast. And your telephone calls coming up. Plus, I'll describe what Democrats voted against today. It's called the SAVE Act. It's not that complicated. And 198 Democrats voted against it. You will not believe what they, in essence, voted for. We'll delve into it next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 5 p.m., and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Plenty of sunshine, 88 degrees. We've got a complete forecast and another traffic report coming up. Another top Hollywood fundraiser. He's urging President Biden to get out of the race. And this time it's a household name. That would be Oscar-winning actor George Clooney. ABC's Stephen Portnoy, he's got more from D.C.
In his New York Times op-ed, George Clooney writes he's not alone, that every governor, senator, and member of the House with whom he's spoken agrees that Democrats will lose in November if Biden stays at the top of the ticket. On MSNBC, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked whether she wants Biden to stay in the running. She declined to answer directly, yes or no.
He's beloved, he is respected, and people want him to make that decision.
The world has finally gotten to hear from Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, whose week-long mission aboard the International Space Station, well, it's gone on a little more than they expected. They've been sitting up there for over a month. ABC's Jim Ryan says the two American astronauts held a news conference this morning above from the space station, well above the rest of us.
A helium leak and thruster issues as the Starliner crew headed to the ISS have delayed the return home, but
I'm not complaining. Butch isn't complaining that we're here for a couple weeks.
They spent part of their time photographing Hurricane Beryl as it approached Houston, where Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore both live.
And yep, power is lost, trees are down, but we're a big team. Everybody pulls together in Texas.
Testing is underway to ensure that the glitches are fixed before the return trip, but Wilmore says,
based on what we know, we're absolutely ready.
Takata, the company at the center of a major airbag inflator recall over a decade ago, they're still dealing with automaker recalls.
BMW is recalling nearly 400,000 cars over concerns their steering wheels may have been replaced with units that include a faulty airbag made by Takata. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says this applies to BMW 3 Series sedans and wagons made between 2006 and 2012, fitted with a Sport or an M Sport steering wheel. Takata is the company behind the airbag inflator, which could explode in a crash, spraying sharp metal fragments into the car.
That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
The Guaranteed Offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
Hello, friends. It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson this week. Matt Murphy in for Brian. Normally, you hear me from noon until 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And man, oh man, it's like a fire hose of information going on in the world today and around the United States of America. You've got House Republicans publicly subpoena. They're offering subpoenas to several White House officials as we speak, demanding that they publicly come to the House of Representatives and testify about the health or infirmity, as the case may be, of the President of the United States of America. We have multiple mega donors calling on Biden to remove himself as a candidate for President of the United States, to include George Clooney. And if you don't think that matters, it might not matter to you. I don't think most of us who are planning to vote for Donald Trump give a rip about what George Clooney thinks about politics, but I promise you the Democrats do. And if you don't believe me, I would point you in the direction of The Right Stuff, the fabulous 1983 feature film involving the space race in the United States of America. One of my favorite films. And I remember this scene like it was yesterday when I first saw it, because it made so much sense to me then and it makes sense to me now. Do you know what makes this bird go up? Funding. That's what makes this bird go up. And that's us. Now, that was about the space race. That was a discussion between the scientists and the pilots as to whether or not they would have a hatch with explosive bolts and a window and an ability to control the capsule that would go on top of the launch vehicle. But it applies to politics. Do you know what makes this bird go up? Funding. It is a multi-gajillion-dollar premise to run for president of the United States. I wish it were not so, but it is. And if you dry up your fundraising, then your candidacy will dry up along with it. In the meantime, in addition to all of the things going on with the Democrats and the possibility of those individuals having a challenged convention, and I'll get into that in a minute, just earlier today, the House of Representatives voted to pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or the SAVE Act. Everything has to be, what are those called? I always screw it up. Acronym. Everything has to be an acronym nowadays. The SAVE Act, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, which seeks to amend the National Voter Registration Act by requiring states to obtain proof of citizenship for individuals voting in federal elections. And seems pretty common sense. Foreigners should not be allowed to vote in our American elections. Non-citizens should not be allowed to vote and are not allowed to vote in our election processes. Sadly, many states allow for non-citizens to vote. This bill would require that states to ensure that non-citizens are not on their voter rolls and to impose penalties of up to 5 years in prison for any election official who registers non-citizens knowingly. The bill was passed by the House of Representatives, and only 5 Democrats voted in favor of it. 198 Democrats voted against a bill that would simply put the onus of the states to not allow non-citizens to register to and to vote for President of the United States of America. Why would they do that? Why would 198 Democrats vote against this? Their claim is that it makes it harder for a citizen to vote, that it would prevent Americans from registering to vote. How in the hell is this the case? Per the legislation, the only thing that you would be required to present at the time of registration to vote would be proof of citizenship, that would be a birth certificate, and proof of identification, meaning some form of government-recognized photo identification that would demonstrate that you are actually who you say you are. Right now, I think it's 34 states require some form of identification to vote on the state level. It's 36 states require some form of voter identification. 14 states and the District of Columbia have what they are called non-documentary ID requirements. I love how Democrats phrase things. Do you know what non-documentary ID requirements means? It means they don't require identification. That's exactly what it means. Non-documentary ID requirements require voters to verify their identification in other ways, including signing an affidavit and providing personal information demonstrating you are who you say you are. In other words, are you Joe Schmo? Yes, I'm Joe Schmo. Okay, come right here and vote. Thank you, Joe. We'll just mark you off the voting rolls as having voted. The affidavit asserts that they are voting with the knowledge that falsely claiming eligibility is a criminal offense. Ooh, wouldn't want to commit a criminal offense now, would we? We have millions upon millions of individuals coming into the United States of America illegally. Sadly, the Biden administration has zero desire to do anything about it. As a matter of fact, it seems as if they desire to continue the practice. Why? My belief is simple. They want to flood the zone with illegal aliens. Those illegal aliens will take up residency at a state of their choosing. Many of them will populate more liberal states that have more liberal policies about their ability to eventually absorb themselves into the fabric of the United States of America. And in doing so, they become a part of the population count. That will skewer the vote totals when we come to our United States Census, which sets population amounts for the various states and ultimately determines how many representatives will go to Washington, D.C. to represent those various states. You beginning to understand how this benefits Democrats, even if they don't vote? Because the population counts people, not citizens. Per the Constitution, some would suggest that this is a flaw in the Constitution, and I would be among them. I do not believe that we should apportion representation based on non-citizens. I believe that we should apportion representation based on citizenship alone. And those individuals that come in as non-citizens, if they do so legally, they can begin the process and eventually become citizens, and then they are counted toward apportionment for the House of Representatives. What the Democrats are doing, they flood the zone with millions upon millions of illegal aliens, and they settle those illegal aliens or watch as they settle naturally into states like California or Arizona or New Mexico or Nevada or even right here in the state of Tennessee. Eventually, the population amounts are tilted to the point that a state like a Georgia or a Tennessee or a Virginia, wherever it might be, might lose one of the 435 representatives, and California or Washington State or New Mexico, they gain one of those representatives, and naturally, those individuals elect a blue representative from those states. And so you've got one more Democrat in Washington, D.C., and one less Republican. One more Democrat to vote to give favor to illegal aliens. One more Democrat to vote to expand the largesse of the United States government, yet again. And eventually, the idea is that you will vote voting rights toward those individuals that have come here illegally. I believe that that is the master plan on the part of the Democrats, to flood the zone to create an additional voting block so as to ensure your reelection opportunities down the road. It's how they do things. So is it any wonder that 198 of our friendly Democrats in the House of Representatives would vote against what seems to be common sense legislation? Just recertifying that it is illegal for non-citizens to vote in our elections, our federal elections, and giving weight to the idea that the states must insist that if you register to vote in our federal elections, that you provide proof of citizenship and proof of identity. What say you? 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. Tim is next up in Virginia. Hey, Tim. Hope you're well.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, I might be out there with Bailey a little bit earlier on, but what do you think about the powers that be of the Democratic Party wanting to get Biden out using Hunter Biden as the way to get him out? Because that's a corrupt family, as everybody knows. Be like the powers that be would say, like, hey, you either get out or we'll put Hunter in prison for the rest of his life. What do you think about something like that happening?
Wait, you get out, or we do what to Hunter? What now?
Put him in prison for the rest of his life. You know what I mean? Just basically blackmail him.
Well, I mean, that if they were going to do that, why wouldn't the president just pardon him?
Well, that's true, too.
I don't know that they would use Hunter as a pick, although they would need to get to Hunter and or Jill in order to convince Joe to bow out. I think you bleed the money out, and I think you ultimately, enough people will create a cascade effect against Joe Biden that he ultimately sees the writing on the wall. I don't know which way this goes. 2 days ago, I would have told you that I believed that Joe Biden would withstand the challenges and would ultimately be the nominee. Now, I'm not so sure. It was a fairly far-fetched question, even after the debate, as to whether or not Joe Biden could be forced out if he did not want to get out on his own. The easiest way to look at this, let's put it this way. There are two scenarios for the Democrats. Number one, Joe Biden is convinced by someone, whomever that might be, that if he believes in America, you use all the stuff that they talk about regularly. If you believe in our democracy and you believe in the United States of America, and if you believe that Donald Trump is truly a threat to democracy and he's an authoritarian and will never come back from it, and it will be the death of America. It's all nonsense and gobbledygook, but whatever. You prey on Joe's sensibilities in that regard, and you convince him that he can't win. You convince him that he's done great service. And I'm just telling you, if you are a Democrat and you want to convince Joe, I don't believe any of these things, but I'm just thinking like a Democrat, which is a dangerous task. You say, Mr. President, you've done great work. You saved our country in 2020, Mr. President. You've had such a great years and years and decades of service. You served your country admirably as United States Senator. You served your country as Vice President. You served your country as President. It's time to go gently into that good night and allow someone to take up that ball and run with it, Mr. President. Now, that's one way, and that's the easiest way. And in that scenario, the delegates that Joe Biden has accumulated, 3,894, you would release those delegates. And so when you release pledged delegates, these are delegates that are pledged to Joe Biden. They've promised that they will vote for Joe Biden at the convention. When you release them, they can vote for whomever they want to. If he were to do that, the delegates would be free to vote for whomever they choose. And it would lead to what is called an open convention, which I don't believe has happened in the 20th century. Not the 21st century, the 20th century, the 1900s. And it's rarely happened in American history. So that prospect, let's deal with that first. So if Joe Biden decides not to run, could he direct his delegates to vote for a particular candidate? In other words, would he get to decide who his successor would be? And the answer is no. Once he releases his candidates, now, he would, one would think that he would have some say in it. One would think that if I'm a pledged delegate for Joe Biden and I'm all weepy because Joe's too old and infirm and he can't make his, way across the stage without fumbling or bumbling, and I'm all sad about that, and Joe says, I can't do it anymore, vote for Kamala, I would probably do that. But I don't have to. There's nothing compelling me to do that. Loyalty has a play, but loyalty only goes so far. Especially when it comes to Kamala Harris, because most supporters of Joe Biden don't really care for Kamala Harris that much. Speaking of Kamala Harris, what would it mean for her? Well, she would probably be one of the 4 or 5 people that would be strongly considered to be the successor, but nothing guarantees that either. She would not be assured the number 1 spot on the ticket. She would not even be assured the number 2 spot on the ticket, because it is the presidential candidate's prerogative as to who they run with as their running mate. So Kamala Harris could be out altogether. Joe Biden's disastrous performance in June provides a timeline, a skinny window of about 3.5 weeks where they can make this decision. The easiest way is to do it with the blessing of Joe Biden and have him release his delegates. But if Joe Biden doesn't release his delegates, there is still a way for the delegates to rebel. But that would take almost 4,000 delegates, or at least half of them. You would need a little over half. So let's say roughly 2,000 of the 4,000 delegates involved in this would all collectively have to decide that they're not voting for Joe Biden, that they're voting for someone else. And that is a Herculean task, to corral all of those cats in such a way that they have become convinced. I mean, it would take another disastrous public performance on Joe's part. The easiest way is for Joe to release these delegates. Whether he does that or not remains to be seen, and I'm here for the chaos. I'm a chaos man through and through. It's 5:23. More of your calls on the way on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The guaranteed offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
The U.S. House considering an inherent contempt resolution for the U.S. Attorney General. And another disturbing crime reported near the downtown WeGo bus station. We'll have those stories at 5:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Anticipating that in just a couple of minutes with Jay Harper over in the Super Talk 99.7 WTN newsroom. My name is Matt Murphy. I broadcast from these fair studios at the end of Music Row in Music City. Thank you for being with us. It's 5:28. Good afternoon. A vote just happening on the floor of the House of Representatives, the SAVE Act. It was passed by the House of Representatives. It is not expected to pass the United States Senate. If it were to pass the United States Senate, Joe Biden has already said that he would veto it. Must be controversial legislation, right? The legislation would require that individuals voting in federal elections be U.S. citizens, and that the various states that conduct these federal elections ensure that those registering for the opportunity to vote or voting are actually U.S. citizens. The demonstration on the part of the Democrats is clear. They want non-citizens to vote. But we already knew that. 615-737-9986. It's Donna's turn. Thank you for calling, Donna. Glad you held. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Matt. Thanks for taking my call. First of all, I would like to say it was really nice to meet you a couple weeks ago at Hot Springs.
Oh, it was
an
a
awesome
pleasure.
Event.
Oh, I do remember you. Thank you, Donna.
That was my first event I got to go to. So my question is, if Kamala Harris moves into Joe's seat and becomes president, do you know who would be next in line and who would become a VP? Is there somebody in line? Would she select somebody, or is that somebody that would be voted in by the people?
So you're suggesting that, let's say Joe steps down as president or the 25th Amendment is invoked. So she's stepping into the role of president of the United States, not as a candidate, but as president.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Then she would appoint a vice presidential successor that would have to be approved by Congress.
Oh, okay.
It would not immediately it would not be the Speaker of the House, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. Uh-huh. All right. Well, yeah, because he's a Republican. I didn't think it would be him. But she could appoint anybody of her choice?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, obviously, they would have to, fulfill the, basic qualifications of the possibility of them becoming president of the United States of America, it being that, it's required that they are a natural-born citizen of the United States, and they've resided in the United States for 14 years, I think, and that they are at least 35 years of age. But other than that, those are the basic requirements.
Matt, as you recall, it's happened before.
Yeah, I think,
Spiro Agnew stepped down.
Mm-hmm. And
Nixon named Gerald Ford, a congressman from Michigan, and Ford stepped in after, the resignation of Nixon and became president.
And then fascinatingly became president of the United States after Nixon's resignation, having never been elected to any statewide office or any federal office. So.
Okay. Now, would she be able to pick, here's going to be my last question, would she be able to pick Obama?
Michelle or Barack?
Barack.
Oh, boy. Donna, Barack couldn't be the president, I don't think. But could he serve as, I don't think that, I'm going to look this up, Donna. Thank you for the call. That's interesting. My initial inclination is to say no. Because Barack has served 2 full terms as president of the United States, that would create an ineligibility issue for him to be vice president, because the first requirement of being vice president is that you can, in the unlikely event of the absence of the president, fulfill the duties of the presidency, which Barack Obama could not do. But I'm going to look at the language of the 25th Amendment, try to figure that out. It's 32 after the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Good afternoon, 5:32. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We've still got a mostly sunny sky and 86 degrees. The latest traffic report and a weather forecast are upcoming. The House is considering an inherent contempt resolution for Attorney General Merrick Garland, brought by Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna of Florida. This specific resolution forces the House to vote on the measure. Luna says, if passed, the resolution would fine Garland $10,000 per day until he complies with handing over audio tapes from special counsel Robert Hur that recorded his interview with President Biden during the classified documents investigation.
The executive branch's blatant disregard for Congress as an institution, shown most recently by the Department of Justice's failure to prosecute Attorney General Merrick Garland, undermines the effectiveness of this body. It also begs the question, what is Attorney General Garland hiding?
Back here in Nashville, another disturbing crime reported near the downtown WeGo bus station.
Channel 4 says an arrest affidavit shows a man was dragged out of his wheelchair and then kicked in the head after agreeing to buy a gift card from a suspect. The report states the man in the wheelchair agreed to fork over $10, but 25-year-old James Claybrooks realized he had $80 and decided to try to get that instead. Police say the man in the wheelchair struggled to keep Claybrooks from snatching the cash from his hand. Claybrooks eventually gave up, but allegedly kicked the man in the back of the head before going inside the station. All of it caught on surveillance camera. Claybrooks arrested and charged with attempted robbery, assault, and possession of a controlled substance and drug paraphernalia. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
WeGo also says that 68 people have been arrested over the past year at the Central Station in downtown Nashville. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
I've done my homework. During that break, as you were listening to some of our fine advertisements on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, I was studying up. And I hope, do you remember the name of the caller?
Donna?
Donna. Yeah. Thank you very much, Chris Weber. Donna, I hope you're still listening. So there is a robust debate about this question. Donna asked, can a former president elected twice to the presidency serve as vice president or even run as vice president of the United States of America? There are differing interpretations as to the answer to your question. Some suggest that, yes, it would be permissible. But I don't believe that it would actually work. I mean, the real nature of the question is, for example, if Joe Biden stepped aside, Kamala Harris was running as president, could she select Barack Obama to be her vice presidential running mate? And the short answer is, one, I think it would be too cute, and I think the voters would respond in kind. Secondarily, the 12th Amendment of the Constitution, and this is the homework that I've been doing, reads as follows. No person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. The 22nd Amendment of the Constitution says that you are not eligible to serve as president of the United States of America if you have been elected to that office more than twice. You may not be elected to the office more than twice. The 22nd Amendment reads, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. So the idea is election versus selection, and that's where the debate is. And I don't know that it's a resolved matter. Some would suggest that if you're not eligible to be president because you've already been elected twice, then you are not eligible to serve as vice president. Others are saying, well, you certainly are eligible to serve as vice president because you would not be elected president if you had to ascend to that office. You would be ascending to the office and not elected to the office. It's a very interesting constitutional question. Thank you, Donna, for asking it. I don't know that I have a definitive answer, but there is a robust debate that you can find. Reddit is a good source of this debate, believe it or not, because I saw some of the Reddit posts where there's a lot of conversation going on. Maybe Scott Desjardins has an answer to any of this. He's our congressman, and Scott joins us on the hotline this afternoon to talk about some recent votes happening in Washington, D.C. on this day. Scott, good afternoon. Welcome in.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Look, we're tackling the hard questions. You know, I had a caller ask if Joe is out and Kamala's in, could Kamala pick Barack to be her running mate for vice president? That's how deeply we're going here, Scott.
Yeah, I heard your interpretation, and I think they went through this a little bit when Hillary was a potential, or she was the nominee, and whether Bill Clinton could be a vice president. I think technically you cannot be elected more than twice, and you think they would have cleaned that up a little better in the 22nd Amendment. But, for example, if Michelle Obama became the nominee, could she pick Barack as her vice president, which is a very scary ticket, but considering he would not be elected 3 times, if she stepped down, he could serve out the rest of her term, but he could not be reelected for a 3rd term.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. I don't know the exact answer, and it is up for debate, but hopefully we don't have to come across that.
Yes, let us all hope. Perish the thought that comes up at some point this summer. Although, the questions abound, and Congressman, it begs the host of this show to ask you, our good congressman from the state of Tennessee, the question: do you think Joe sticks around on the ballot? Can he survive what is clearly a Democrat crisis, not an American crisis? Maybe we could call it that, considering he is the president of the United States. But does he stick around as the candidate for the Democrats, or will they, by hook or crook, replace him?
Yeah, he's trying to run out the clock because they've got to make a decision, I think, before the DCCC convention and the delegates are cast. Now, I suppose if he resigned after that, they could still put in a replacement. But I think he's defiant, and shame on his family because he's not capable of holding the office. I never thought he would make it this far. I was saying a year ago he would never run for a 2nd term, but yet here we are. It is interesting to watch the tug of war going on here on the Hill amongst the Democrats, and it's interesting on the Armed Services Committee, which I serve, the ranking member and several other Democratic members who are more neutral when it comes to national policy, are asking for him to step aside, as well as you see the Hollywood elite, George Clooney. I saw John Daly eviscerated the media and the Democratic Party for the cover-up for his debate performance. But it's a really interesting dilemma for them. And what amazes me is the shock of the revelation of the liberal media that Joe Biden is not who they thought he was until that debate, when we've been talking about it for, well, heck, before he was even elected, about his mental faculties and his incapacitation to be the commander-in-chief. So it's kind of entertaining in a way to watch them struggle and try to pass this off as some new revelation. But, I don't have a great answer. You know, he's holding in there tough, but the momentum is building to make him step down, and the money is drying up. And if that happens, I think they see the writing on the wall that he can't win. The polling is suggesting that as well.
Well, in the meantime, for those conservatives in our audience, for the libertarians in the audience, for, the voters of Scott DesJarlais, we can watch this with a little bit of a detached amusement because this is not our party. This is not our chaos. This is their chaos. Well, that's all fine and good in terms of the campaign. But what frightens me, Scott, is who's minding the hen house during the next 7 months? Is that the conversation going on in Washington, D.C. amongst your colleagues? Because my fear is I want to know who's running the country. And if we do not have a mentally capable commander-in-chief, how is that not a constitutional crisis that merits a conversation about the 25th Amendment?
Well, I don't think he's been calling the shots since he was selected as their nominee and was hidden in the basement during COVID. So I don't think he's been pulling the strings. Clyburn from South Carolina was the one that forced them to choose Kamala Harris. That was not his choice. Biden did not like her. And I think Obama, Soros, people behind the scenes, call it deep state, whatever you want to call it, is running the country. He's clearly not capable. His excuses for a poor debate performance, such as a head cold or jet lag from 10 days prior, is not a viable answer. If he gets woke up at 2 a.m. and says the Russians have just detonated a low-yield nuclear weapon, what are we going to do? He won't have his faculties. He won't make that decision, and he's not been making those decisions. So, yeah, he's not fit to serve 4 more years. I don't think he's fit to serve 4 months. And he shouldn't be serving now. I think it's pretty clear that he's not in charge and he's not capable.
So let's talk about what happened today on the floor of the House of Representatives. The SAVE Act was passed. Thank you to the Republican Party for doing so. 198 Democrats voted against this legislation. Were you surprised that so many Democrats voted against it and nakedly declared that they don't really care if illegal aliens are voting in our federal elections?
I was stunned. I mean, you think if you're a House member from any of the border states, and you've got to go back and explain to your constituents who are equally upset about the border crisis that you did not vote for this, you can bet that there's going to be an ad run against every vulnerable member in any of those states, or really it should be anywhere across the country. When Speaker Johnson was giving his message on the floor today, he was naming off multiple states where they had purged the records of, it wasn't thousands, but there were hundreds of voters in cases where illegals had voted, and they weren't the border states where it's more prevalent. It wasn't California. God knows how many have voted there, but they're actually, they encourage them to register. They have to, check a box saying they're a citizen, but there's no checks and balance. There's no way to make them prove that. So we know what's going on. And yeah, I was actually stunned. I figured that we would pull 50 or 60 vulnerable Democrats to vote in favor of this, because 90% of all Americans agree that Americans should elect Americans in elections, and that includes Democrats. They may be 82 or 88%, but when you take the voting population, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, whatnot, almost everyone's got it right. You can't vote in an American election unless you're an American citizen. So, yeah, I'm a little stunned that they stuck together. I think it's going to hurt a lot of them.
4th Congressional District Representative of the great state of Tennessee, Scott DesJarlais, joining us on The Drive. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson today. Scott, I mean, the weak argument, and I think it's a phony baloney argument, but I want you to respond to it. The Democrats who voted against this thing said, hey, this is already against the rules, And the Republicans are just making stuff up. We don't have non-citizens voting in federal elections. This is just election year nonsense, and they're trying to make it harder for legal citizens to register to vote. How do you respond to those allegations?
Well, I mean, just what I said. We're relying on the honor system. So somebody fills out a census and they say, yes, I'm a citizen, but there's no checks and balances. They don't have to prove that they are. These people broke the law by coming into our country. What makes you think that they're not going to break the law and vote? And why has Biden allowed up to 16 million illegals to cross our border? And it's not people seeking asylum or a fear of persecution from their countries. These are mostly 18 to 59-year-old single men who are coming here, many of them Chinese, Venezuelans, as Trump said, empty in prisons, this and that. Yes, there are some families that are seeking refugee status, but that's the majority of the people that have come in under Biden are working-age males, and many of them have been on the terrorist watch list. We don't know anything about them. And why should we trust somebody whose first action when coming to America is to break the border laws or the immigration laws? So, yeah, their argument is really weak, as you said, and it's common sense that there should be some type of proof. Like, why do we not have voter ID laws in every state? Why? I mean, how can you not ask somebody to prove who you are when you're voting? Just states like Maryland here, my chief of staff's daughter, who's 16, got a ballot. My chief called and said, why is my daughter getting a ballot? That's okay, don't worry about it. Well, Maryland's mostly Democrats, so they know if 16-year-olds are voting, they're going to vote Democrat. There'll be a smattering of Republicans, but they probably wouldn't do it because they're honest. So, I mean, there is fraud in elections, and there are illegals that are voting, and there's proof of that.
Scott, so where does this go in the Senate? Do you think it goes anywhere in the Senate? I mean, obviously the Democrats have control over there, and they have I wouldn't think that they would have any interest in bringing this up.
I doubt that they will. And the president, interestingly, issued a veto threat if they did pass it from the Senate. So here you have a guy, open borders, 16 million people coming in, isn't concerned about them voting in an election. It's what we thought all along. Why would he be allowing our country to be invaded like this? And it's for the reason that we passed this bill today, or one of the reasons.
Real quick, Scott, I got a boogie, but I need to ask you about Anna Paulina Luna and her move to force a vote on resolutions holding Attorney General Merrick Garland in inherent contempt. Are you in favor of that or not? And if so, why?
Well, I think most of us are in favor of doing it. The timing we question. I mean, today we had a very good message on illegals not voting. This will suck up some oxygen tonight, whether or not this is, Republicans just making a political statement. I voted to hold him in contempt because he ignored a subpoena. There's other people in the Trump administration serving in jail right now. Steve Bannon's being one of them, Peter Navarro being another. So I think he needs to be held accountable, but it could have been referred through committee. It could have been done through proper channels. I don't think that the timing was right, but I do think it's something that needed to be addressed.
Scott, thank you for your time today. We always appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Take care.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, there's a 4th Congressional District Representative of the state of Tennessee, Scott Desjardins. Back in just a moment.
Hey, it's Dan Mandis, and I am so glad that California Closets has fixed my closet catastrophe. After exact measuring and planning, they came over and got to work. Yeah, once it was all plotted out on their 3D CAD system, the pieces are measured, cut, and precisely installed into my space. It was clean, fast, and professional, and above all, my new closets look and function great. Now, this was my dormer, and now this is my new dormer thanks to California Closets. Look at all of this added space for shirts and shoes, you name it, and it is cut so precisely, simply amazing. And my old closet that has now been reborn as the ultimate in style and functionability, making the best use of the space that I had. They can work on just about anything: bedrooms, garages, home offices, closets, pantries, and so much more. Find them online, CaliforniaClosets.com, and see what they can do for you. You can schedule a free design consultation. Mention my name, CaliforniaClosets.com.
Good evening. We're coming up on 6:02 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Still a bit of sunshine, 86 degrees. The latest traffic report and another weather forecast are coming up. President Biden meeting today with the United Kingdom's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who's in D.C. for the NATO summit. Starmer congratulated the president on 75 years of NATO, and Biden says he sees the UK as the knot tying the alliance all together.
I thought we had a good meeting today, NATO. Very good. I thought we had a good meeting, and I think things are moving in the right direction. I feel really optimistic.
On Capitol Hill, the U.S. House considering an inherent contempt resolution for Attorney General Merrick Garland, brought by Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna of the state of Florida. This specific resolution forces the House to vote on the measure. Luna says if passed, the resolution would fine Garland $10,000 per day until he complies with handing over audio tapes that special counsel Robert Hur recorded of his interview with President Biden during the classified documents investigation. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene accused Garland of not abiding by the same laws that apply to everyone else.
I urge my Republican conference to support this resolution, reclaim our congressional authority, and hold Merrick Garland in account for his hypocritical and illegal actions that spit in the faces of all Americans' right to a fair justice system.
We now move to the southwestern United States, where jurors began hearing testimony today in actor Alec Baldwin's trial for the fatal shooting of Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins on a New Mexico film set 3 years ago. Prosecutors argued Alec Baldwin behaved recklessly and is responsible for his negligence in Hutchins' death. The defense arguing Baldwin was handed a gun that was supposed to be safe for the scene. ABC's Mola Lenghi reports from the courthouse in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
What we know about the history of this gun is that after the shooting, that investigators sent it to the FBI, who performed tests. We know that Baldwin obviously said that he had never pulled the trigger, so they performed what is called an accidental discharge test. And in the process of that test, the gun was damaged. And the defense really hopping on this today, saying that they deprived Baldwin of a critical piece of evidence that could have been used by destroying this weapon.
And finally, Fox Business reporting that discount retailer Big Lots expects to close 35 to 40 stores by the end of the year. That's according to a U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filing. In that filing, the company noted substantial doubt about the company's ability to continue due to shoppers pulling back on spending due to inflation. Ohio-based Big Lots operates more than 1,300 stores across 48 U.S. states, according to a June earnings press release. Last month, Big Lots reporting a net loss of $205 million for the first quarter of 2024 that ended back on May 4th. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, it's Dan Mandis, and I am so glad that California Closets has fixed my closet catastrophe. After exact measuring and planning, they came over and got to work. Yeah, once it was all plotted out on their 3D CAD system, the pieces are measured, cut, and precisely installed into my space. It was clean, fast, and professional, and above all, my new closets look and function great. Now, this was my dormer, and now this is my new dormer thanks to California Closets. Look at all of this added space for shirts and shoes, you name it, and it is cut so precisely, simply amazing. And my old closet that has now been reborn as the ultimate in style and functionality, making the best use of the space that I had. They can work on just about anything: bedrooms, garages, home offices, closets, pantries, and so much more. Find them online, CaliforniaClosets.com, and see what they can do for you. You can schedule a free design consultation. Mention my name, CaliforniaClosets.com.
All right, here we go. The drive continues. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson today and this week. Thank you for being with us. Normally, I am heard from noon until 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Pleased to slide into afternoon drive with you. Final hour begins right now. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Get your phone calls in, 615-737-9986. Any subject matter of your choosing. Obviously, as I said at the beginning of the week, we've entered what I would describe as silly season when it comes to the presidential campaign. Obviously, we discuss the presidency quite a bit on this radio station and on the various radio shows, live and local as they are. We discuss the presidency as it matters to you. We discuss things that matter to you. But from now until November, there will be a tremendous amount of discussion about the presidential contest, and just buckle up and get ready for it because we've just begun regarding the Democrat Party and where they go with their candidate for the presidency, who happens to be the current president of the United States, or as we sometimes say, the current resident of the United States, Joe Biden. A ninth Democrat, a ninth sitting House member, has now called for Joe Biden to rescind his candidacy, release his delegates, and allow an open convention to decide who the candidate would be facing off against Donald Trump. The Republican National Convention is set to begin next week, with Donald Trump set to select his vice presidential candidate. There was a question and a discussion last hour brought up by Donna, and I've done some further research and study on it about whether or not someone who has previously served as president of the United States, it's a hypothetical, and I don't believe it would ever happen. But the question is interesting enough that I'll bring it back up because many of you had comments on it on the membersnutrition.com super text line. So if you're just joining us, the question goes like this. Let's say Joe Biden leaves and gives his delegates up. He says, I'm not running. He doesn't leave the presidency, but he says, I'm not running for re-election. And let's say that subsequently the Democrats pick Kamala Harris to be their presidential candidate. Could Kamala Harris select Barack Obama as her running mate? Barack Obama has been elected twice in 2008 and 2012 to serve as president of the United States. The Constitution clearly says that no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Constitution also says, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected, president shall be elected to the office of president more than once. In other words, if Chris Webber and I ran as a tandem, we'd destroy it, by the way. We'd be so good. Do you want to be president or you want me to be president?
It's a scary thought, but I'll let you have the prez. I'm fine with VP.
Well, because I'm going to die. In the hypothetical that I'm about to bring up,
I wasn't going to bring that up.
So Weber's my vice president. I'm the president, and then I keel over. It's because of my sciatica that I was complaining about off air a little while ago. I keel over and die early on in my presidency. What it is designed to prevent is that Weber then serves, let's say, 3.5 years of my term, runs for re-election, serves a full 4-year term, and then runs for re-election again. And so ultimately he's getting almost 12 years of service. After Franklin Delano Roosevelt, nobody wanted that length of time anymore. So they said, look, if you have to ascend to the presidency, through, sadly someone dying in office or being mentally incapable, then if it's over half of that term, then you're not going to be able to run but one more time. It does not say anything about 10 years. And a lot of you are suggesting that it does. It doesn't. It doesn't say 10 years. It just says 2 years of a term where someone else was elected president. All of that to say, while it is a hypothetical, I do not believe that the courts would allow for a former 2-term president to run as a vice president, or at least to serve as a vice president, because the 12th Amendment clearly defines that the vice presidential candidate has to be eligible to be president of the United States. At the time that was written, that was really about age, and it was about being a natural-born citizen. But now it's about more than just that. It's about eligibility to serve, and if you've already served a full 8 years, I don't believe that you would be permitted to serve an additional length of time. Although, it's more of an open question than one would originally presume. Anyway, it's a fun exercise. The 9th U.S. representative, Democrat, has called for Joe Biden to quit, saying that we will be better served with a new and different candidate. In addition to that, George Clooney has written an op-ed piece in the New York Times weeks after hosting Barack Obama and Joe Biden and others at this lavish L.A. fundraiser. Huge stage, huge party, huge donations. They raised millions of dollars, and everybody was smiles. And, Julia Roberts was there, and George Clooney was there, and it was a star-studded event. And Jimmy Kimmel was there, and Barack was there, and Joe was there. Remember that this event was what created cheap fakes. You remember that? So it was after this event that we broadcast it, and I didn't do much on it between noon and 3 because it's such a visual. But I guarantee most of you listening have seen this video where the event is over and everyone is gathering themselves up to walk off stage, and Joe Biden's just standing there staring off into space. Just this kind of blankly staring at nothing. And Barack Obama walks over and takes him by the wrist and leads him off the stage as if he were leading a child off the stage. It is not so much to me in watching that event that Barack Obama touched the president of the United States in the way that he did. The fact that Joe Biden allowed himself to then be led all the way off the stage in the way that he was led off the stage was scary to see the first time I saw it and the last time I saw it, and every time in between. It is frightening to consider that the president of the United States allowed himself to be treated in that manner publicly, seemingly oblivious to what was going on. He looked like a child. He was being led like a child. And for those of us that pointed it out, we were met with a robust blowback from the White House as they said, "How dare you? These are cheap fakes," they said. Not deep fakes, but cheap fakes. In as much as everybody knows the president is fully within his faculties, everybody knows that was just a moment in time where two friends, compatriots, came together and were holding hands as they walked off the stage together, arm in arm, in triumph over the night and over the event. Well, that's not what we saw, and we know that's not what we saw. Is it not interesting now, after such a pushback from the White House on this idea that Joe Biden wasn't with it that night, that George Clooney referred directly to that night in his op-ed piece, saying, "I saw him 3 weeks ago, and this was not the man that I saw in 2020. This was not the man that was around in 2010. This guy is not with it. He's not there. He's not the same guy." We all knew that, and George is now admitting it. This was also the same night that Joe Biden had a few words to say about Donald Trump, specifically Donald Trump's golf game. This is the funniest non-story about the presidential election so far for me. You might recall that during the debate, Joe Biden brought up his Donald Trump challenge. Donald Trump was answering a question about his fitness for office. And in answering the question, and we'll get to that clip in a minute, in answering the question, Donald Trump said, "Yeah, I won a couple of club championships, not senior championships, club championships." And Joe Biden scoffed at that and said, "I was a 6 handicap." And Donald Trump said, "You were no damn 6 handicap." I'm paraphrasing. And Joe mentioned that he had challenged Donald Trump to a golf game. Well, apparently he had done that in the weeks prior at this fundraising event. So I want to start with this audio from the fundraiser where Joe Biden is sitting on stage with Barack Obama, and I think Jimmy Kimmel's there as well. And they're having
Colbert.
Oh, is it Colbert?
Stephen Colbert.
Okay, Stephen Colbert was there as well. And they're having this little discussion, and Joe Biden brings up his Trump golf challenge. Listen in.
Can voters trust a presidential candidate who has not won a single Trump International Golf Club trophy? At long last, sir, have you no chip shot?
Well, look, I'd be happy to play. I told him once before when he came into the Oval, when he was before he got sworn in, I said, I'll give you 3 strokes if you carry your own bag.
And ha, 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 ha. Hey, Joe made a fat joke. I guess that's what Joe was trying to do. Make a fat joke. If you carry your own bag, now, does anybody believe that Joe Biden can carry his own bag? Does anyone believe that Joe Biden has ever carried his own bag? I've carried my own bag. It's no fun. I go to play golf to have fun, not to tote weights for 18 holes. So that was the event several weeks ago. Well, Joe revisited that during the debate. And as out there and not with it as he was, he remembered the quip. And so here's the exchange between Trump and Joe Biden from the debate on the 27th of June.
We knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie, that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was at 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
Let's not act like children.
I mean, it was the best throwaway line in my estimation that Trump had of the entire night. Let's not act like children. Joe got confused. Did you hear him? He was like, 6-handed. Well, no, I was up to 8, and then I was, and then it's a 6, and he was all confused about the numbers. But Biden says, yeah, I challenged him if he would carry his own bag, and I'll take him on in a driving competition anytime. Well, Donald Trump held his first big-time rally since those debates. This was yesterday. And Donald Trump did not forget the Joe Biden golf challenge. Let's listen in.
And in the debate, Sleepy Joe also declared that he wanted to test his skills and stamina against mine on the golf course. Can you believe this? Did you ever see him swing? He's like this. That's why this evening I am also, and this is in honor of you and everybody here, is at 45,000 people. That's a lot of people. I'm also officially challenging Cricket Joe to an 18-hole golf match right here. Underows Blue Monster, considered one of the greatest tournament golf courses anywhere in the world, one of the great courses of the world. It will be among the most watched sporting events in history, maybe bigger than the Ryder Cup or even the Masters. And I will even give Joe Biden 10 strokes aside. 10 strokes, that's a lot. That means 20 strokes in case you don't play golf. I will give him 10 strokes aside, and if he wins, I will give the charity of his choice, any charity that he wants, $1 million. And I'll bet you he doesn't take the offer. I would bet because he's all talk. But what that match will do is prove that Joe is, in fact, all talk and no action.
There's Donald Trump from the rally last night. And so Donald Trump has not just accepted, he's doubled down. The Biden people have responded. I'll tell you what the ridiculous response is in just a moment, plus your calls. It is The Drive. No Brian. Matt in for Brian on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The Guaranteed Offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
A Florida Republican congresswoman bringing an inherent contempt resolution against the U.S. Attorney General. We'll hear from her, and we'll have today's closing money news. That's all coming up at 6:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Jay Harper. Appreciate you, Matt Murphy, on the drive. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So, not to belabor this, it's just so amusing. You cannot make this up. So Biden likes to talk tough when he ought not to. And he's like, I'll beat you in golf anytime you're ready. You just have to carry your own bag, buddy. And they laugh about it at some Democrat fundraiser where now George Clooney says the guy was completely out of it during the entire time. And so it comes up at the debate. And I told you, I'd challenge you. I'd do a driving contest anytime you want a driving contest, do anything you want. And so now Trump says, okay, let's go. $1 million challenge, 18-hole tournament, and I will give you 10 strokes aside, which, if you don't understand anything about golf, that is more than a stroke a hole. So on any given hole, if you're supposed to make you can make one more. You can take one more shot than me every single hole plus 2, and you win. It's an astronomical give. That's Donald Trump saying, not only do I not think you can play golf, you're never going to accept the challenge. You couldn't walk out of the car. You can find your butt with a compass and a flashlight. And the Biden people who originally brought all of this up, they're now saying that Donald Trump's challenge is antics. That was their word, that they're not in the mood for antics. Well, then why did you bring it up? This is the same thing that Joe Biden got himself into with the debate. Y'all remember that, right? Donald Trump said, I will debate you anytime, anywhere. And Joe said, okay, what about in June with CNN and Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, 2 people that hate you? And no audience. And Donald Trump said, okay, let's go. And the Biden people went, oh, okay. And we see what happened there. Antics. We'll continue.
Joe is, in fact, all talk and no action.
There you go. There's our president of the United States. John and Lee will get to you in a moment at 6:31 on Super Talk.
Good evening. We are coming up on 6:31. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We've still got sunshine, 85 degrees now, a full forecast, and another traffic report are upcoming. The House is considering an inherent contempt resolution for Attorney General Merrick Garland, brought by Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna of Florida. This specific resolution forces the House to vote on the measure. Luna says if passed, the resolution would fine Mr. Garland $10,000 every day until he complies with handing over audio tapes that special counsel Robert Hur recorded of his interview with President Biden during the classified documents investigation.
With Attorney General Garland and the Department of Justice refusing to follow the law, we have been left with no choice but to rely on inherent contempt, our constitutional authority to hold an individual accountable for refusing to comply with congressional demands.
Congressional Democrats criticizing the resolution as nothing more than a MAGA-inspired political stunt. We now turn to Dave Packer. He's got today's closing money news.
From ABC News, Wall Street Now. It's a new milestone for the S&P, which has now crossed the 5,600 mark for the first time. Investors are inspired by Fed Chair Jerome Powell's remarks to the House and Senate about an upcoming interest rate cut. This makes 37 times just this year that the S&P has set an all-time high. The Dow added 429 points. The Nasdaq gained 218. Investors will also be paying attention to the next inflation reading out tomorrow. Economists are expecting inflation will be 3.1% higher for the year, lower than last month's reading of 3.3%. The tax preparation and financial software company Intuit is laying off about 10% of its workforce. or about 1,800 employees, as part of a reorganization plan that will add more artificial intelligence into its products and services. BMW is recalling more than 390,000 vehicles in the U.S. because they were made with airbag inflators that could explode, flinging sharp metal objects into the face of the driver.
That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Matt Murphy for Members Nutrition. I want to tell you about the Members Nutrition difference, and I want to encourage you to go over to the Members Nutrition website. Number one, they believe at Members Nutrition that they can sell vitamins and supplements at a lower cost point, and they're doing it every single day at membersnutrition.com. Number two, they want to make these products right here in the United States of America, not from some overseas company, and they do that every single day. I encourage you to go to membersnutrition.com. You'll get 50% off your purchase price at checkout. You don't have to put in any codes. Just go to membersnutrition.com. Once again, membersnutrition.com.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The drive continues. It's 6:39, almost 6:40. Thank you for being with us. We've got a little more time together to float around some of the issues of the day. Look, I try to be, whether it's on my regular show during my regular slot from noon until 3 or subbing in for Brian on the drive, I try to be as transparent with you as humanly possible. And I don't know of anyone that knows where all of this is going with regard to Joe Biden. But I've been around long enough that you kind of get a sense. I originally said if this outlasted the 4th of July holiday, that there was something here. Early on in the week, I felt like, Monday and Tuesday, I felt like, no, Joe's going to withstand this. He has his somewhat, of his sea legs back underneath him. He delivered a speech that was a fairly innocuous speech prior to the NATO summit coming. No, I think Joe's got this. I don't think Joe's got this. What with mega donors of prominence announcing that they're no longer going to give, there was a report out earlier today that the donations have dried up. And by dried up, like what you would expect to be in the tens of millions of dollars have gone to the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That kind of drying up. Now you have 9 separate House of Representative members declaring that they want another candidate. You now have the first United States Senator, I had his name here, Peter Welch, I believe it was. I don't know Senator Welch, but let's see where Peter's from. Peter Welch is a United States Senator from the fine state of Vermont, who becomes the first Senate Democrat to publicly urge the President of the United States not to run for re-election. And now this, just coming out 10 minutes ago, there's new reporting that Chuck Schumer has told Democrat donors that he said this privately, has yet to say it publicly. Nancy Pelosi refused to say it one way or the other. When asked directly on multiple interviews, she said, I like Joe. He's a great guy. He's a great public servant, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. I'm not going to make a determination one way or the other, as Nancy Pelosi does. Chuck Schumer is now saying privately to donors that he would be open to a different slate at the Democratic convention. These doors are being cracked open. They're about to be busted wide open. And if you forced me to give you an answer at 6:42 in the evening, I would tell you that given the fissures that have been created over the last 24 to 36 hours, it's only going to get worse for this guy, and there's no way for him to stop it. The only way to stop it is to... You know how you would stop this? If you're not really mentally feeble, if you're not too old to serve another 4-year term. I mean, you've got George Stephanopoulos, of course, being caught with his pants down. An individual in New York City saw him on the street and said, how about that interview? This guy, did you see that little video that the guy did of him? You can't really hear it, otherwise I'd play it for you. But he sees George coming, and he's got his phone out, and his phone's kind of by his side as if he's not recording, but he was recording. Hey, George, how about that interview, huh? And he goes, what do you think? You think he's really got it? And George Stephanopoulos said there's no way he can serve another 4 years. And then kept on walking. Since then, ABC News has said, now George's comments do not reflect the editorial opinion of ABC News. And George has been forced to apologize publicly, saying that he shouldn't have said anything. Well, he did say something. The closest allies and friends to Joe Biden now understand that Joe Biden can't possibly continue to run. So I think they are going to take the unknown over the known. They believe that they know exactly how this works out if Joe remains the nominee. The one way you stop this is to call a press conference. If you wanted to stop it and you had the ability to do so, this is the way you do it. You call a press conference. You say, all of the assembled press, come to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in the East Room at this appointed time, and here's Joe Biden. And you stand there and you say, okay, I'm going to answer questions until you're done. Let's go. And you do it. the way that Ronald Reagan used to do it, the way that Bill Clinton did it, and many, many other presidents in the past. That's the way you get it done. But he can't get that done. Literally, he can't do it. Not that he doesn't want to, he can't. And America now knows it. We've known it for a long time. America knows it. John is next up. John, thank you for your patience. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
You're up. What's on your mind, man?
Well, I got 2 points. One, you might not think Joe Biden's politically savvy, but one way for him to have this whole thing end with on an upgrade for him is for him to go to the convention and say, okay, I've released my delegates. That doesn't mean they don't have to, or they won't vote for him. That just means he's releasing them, because he can add a caveat and say, but you're going to have to remember that your vote will go against the 82 million people that have already made me president once, and all the people that voted for me in the primary. So you can listen to the talking heads, or you can vote what the American people did.
Let me tell you. John, I don't disagree with your analysis that Joe Biden could go to the convention and he could make an announcement, although typically presidents or the nominees don't come about until the end of the process. But yes, he could do that. And I would tell you this, John, if Joe Biden released his delegates, they would run screaming to whomever they could find to vote for anyone other than this dude.
Well, that's probably true, but he's also going to say that you're going to be voting against the 82 million people, Americans, that have already voted for me. And that's going to have an impact on when they start saying, the Democratic Party, okay, we're going to go against the 82 million that have already made him a president.
Yeah, that was last time around. There have been plenty of one-term presidents, John.
Well, that's fine, but
I mean, the vote, John. I mean, I don't mean, I'm not trying to argue with you, but the vote that happened in 2020 has zero impact on what's happening right now. Did you see the debate, man?
Oh, I saw the debate.
It was awful. It was elder abuse.
Well, that's my other point, though. Debates and polls don't make the presidency. They don't make the votes. No one talks about the software that's being put in the machines, because the last election was not lost by polls and debates. It was lost by software and machines.
Well, then how do we know that 82 million people voted for him last time?
Correct. Correct. How do you know that 87 million is going to vote for somebody else this time?
I don't. Yeah. I look, John. I understand what you're saying about voting machines and making sure that we have the most honest and fair elections that we possibly can have. If Joe Biden releases his delegates, those delegates will clamor to vote for anyone other than Joe Biden, because they now know that they've been lied to. They've been lied to. They've been lied to. They've been lied to. And the voters of this country recognize it. There wasn't a real primary. They didn't have a real candidate. They kept the real candidate off the Democrat ballot. RFK wanted to challenge Joe Biden, and the Democrats would not allow it. They threw him under the bus as a result. There was no real primary this year. Those voters that went to the polls and voted for Biden, they didn't have an option. Who was their option? Dean Phillips? Come on. There was no real option. And the people that voted for him know that. 649 on Super Talk.
The Guaranteed Offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
Winding down another edition of The Drive. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. I apologize to those telephone callers that I was unable to get to. We'll get to you tomorrow. I'm back in for the big man, Brian Wilson, from 3 until 7 tomorrow. And don't forget, Friday's edition, we are at Tim's Ford Lake in beautiful Winchester, Tennessee. Come on out and see us at the Twin Creeks Marina. I think I did both of those things properly.
You sure?
Encapsulation.
I don't do that.
That's just for me and you. I love Dan Man. He's still on vacation too, isn't he?
I think so.
But he'll be back on Monday. We'll get the entire lineup back where we are supposed to be starting on Monday. But until then, I'm enjoying Afternoon Drive with all of you. Thank you for being a part of our evening. We appreciate you so much on the membersnutrition.com super text line and on the phone lines. We're back tomorrow at 3 o'clock, folks. Have a wonderful evening. Hug your loved ones. So long, everybody.